Okay, good morning, everyone. If you'd like to take a seat, and welcome to this event, which focuses on the Cyber Resilience Act. So my name is Nick Ferguson, and I'm the coordinator of the CyberStand project. And I work for an SME called Trust IT Services, and we're based in Pisa in Italy. So today's event, as I said, is all about the Cyber Resilience Act, its implementation, discussion around how it will be implemented, and the standards which are being developed now to ensure that compliance is possible. The Act is a very important regulation, which is being brought in to increase cybersecurity for both software and hardware products, which are to be sold on the European market. So it impacts on European organizations, in particular small and medium enterprises, startups, and also large players as well, but also internationally as well. Any company which wants to put a product on the market will have to comply. And standards are a way of ensuring compliance. And these are currently being developed by the European standards organizations who we have here today. Because in the CyberStand project, which is funded by the European Union and is a Digital Europe program project, we have quite a small but strong consortium, which includes CEN, CENELEC and ETSI, the three European standardization organizations, EXO, the European Cybersecurity Organization, which leads activities around policy dialogue and driving community dialogue around the Act. And also, from an SME perspective, the Digital SME Alliance, which is our bridge to the SME community, which of course is vital, and they really need to understand the implications of the Act as it comes into force. So I'm from a Trust IT, and we're an SME, as I said, and we lead a lot of activities around standardization and funding people to contribute to standards. And the key aspect of CyberStand is to increase the number of new faces into standardization from the SME community and open source contributors. So this is an overview of our project. It runs for 3 years. We're just at the end of the first year. And as you can see, a key aspect is providing funding for people to contribute to these standards. We have 1.5 million, half of which we've been able to distribute in this first part of the project. And we have opportunities for people to apply for that, which are continuously open and assessed. As I said, policy dialogue is very important, and today's an important part of this in terms of establishing synergies and also looking at best practices from national perspectives, European perspectives, and international perspectives as well. Another important activity is around community building, and we have Matteo here somewhere in the room who leads a community group. So if you're not a member, you should join, because this is very important. There's lots of meetings and awareness-raising activities around that to involve people, not just to raise awareness, but also to get, as I said, more understanding of the processes and how you get involved in standardization activities as well. So a lot of doors opening, if you like. And then a lot of awareness and training around not just standardization, but also around the implementation of the Cyber Resilience Act. And we have James at the back there from Digital SME Alliance, who is leading a lot of the activities. And if Lucia and Igor and Kim, you could put your hands up, because they're obviously representing the European standardization organizations too. So we have a really full agenda today. We have a lot of speakers. We have a number of speakers this morning who are going to lay out information around the Act and how it is being implemented. We have a presentation in a moment from Felipe Jones-Mourão from the European Commission, who is one of the leading people at the Commission in the implementation of the Act, and someone who we work very closely with in the project. We then have Angelo, who's going to be giving some information on central requirements and case studies around why the Cyber Resilience Act is so important. We then have Dean and Adela looking at how standards can be used for compliance, for self-assessment, and then we'll be hearing from 9 different projects which are funded by the Commission to look into compliance tools and different ways in which the Cyber Resilience Act can be implemented smoothly. So things which are supporting and helping organizations to do this. So a lot of funding from the Commission towards this to make things smooth. So in the afternoon, we'll have 3 breakout sessions. One will be in here, one will be in this room, and another one in another room. I'm not entirely sure where, but we'll find out in the afternoon. And here we'll be looking more closely at vertical standards, which are being implemented or starting to be implemented now, and as also challenges and opportunities for SMEs that the Cyber Resilience Act brings. And then in the afternoon, we'll hear from the different chairs of those sessions. And Lucia, importantly, at the beginning here, will be giving a status update on the development of the standards, which are ongoing. We hope you can stay to the end because we have drinks and snacks in this amazing venue. So hopefully you'll be able to stay the full day. If you're following us online, so we have 80 people registered to attend in person, which is fantastic. Hopefully the numbers will grow during the day. And we have 200 registered to follow us online. So it's quite a large audience. So if you're following online, then you can put your questions in the Q&A box and we'll try to get through them and try to put them to the speakers as well. If you're here, hand up, please, okay? The internet connection is should be on there, but it's not. It's events, but we can distribute this during the day if you don't have that. Just to remind you that we do have these funding opportunities which are continuously open. There is it's a simple application form. We have external evaluators who evaluate all of the applications. And currently the focus is on the development of the vertical standards. You can see here how many have been funded to date. We've had over 700,000 euro funded, and a lot of people from small and medium enterprises have been able to contribute to the development, in particular of horizontal and vertical standards. You'll hear a bit more about these 2 topics later in the morning. And this is the new funding opportunity which has just opened. It'll open next week. And it's continuous assessment. So if you make an application, then we will assess it immediately. It'll be evaluated, and we want people to be starting as immediately as possible on these activities. Okay, with that, we have a Slido just to see who's attending. If you can answer that, also people online, please, then that would be fantastic. We just want to see, you know, the spread of different types of organizations we have here, and there'll be more interactive things and polls later in the day to get you involved. So without further ado, I'd like to pass the floor to Felipe, who will be giving an overview of the Cyber Resilience Act itself.
Hi, thank you. Thanks. Good morning, everyone. Okay, here's the stage. I think this is my first time presenting the CRA on a stage, so this is very exciting. So this is a presentation on the Cyber Resilience Act. I do see a lot of familiar faces. I also see several new faces, which is great, and I hope online a lot of interested people in the CRA. So I'll try to cover both the basics and get you up to speed on where we are now. My name is Philippe Morin. I'm a desk officer in the European Commission in the Cybersecurity Policies Unit. So Cyber Resilience Act is the legislation that the Commission has come out with. It's been adopted in December 2024. In a nutshell, it's about reducing the number of vulnerabilities in our products. So of course, we know security is not 0 or 1. There's no absolute security, but there's a lot that can be done to improve the security of products. And that's essential for the overall supply chain and networks. So this is an EU product legislation. Maybe you've seen the safety legislation in the EU. This follows the same model. Basically, it puts rules, cybersecurity rules for the placing on the market of both hardware and software products. These obligations fall on manufacturers, distributors, and importers. The essential requirements cover the whole life cycle of the product. So even after the product has been placed on the market, manufacturers need to continue doing their vulnerability handling and even reporting after the product support lifetime has expired. The legislation is supported by harmonized standards. There's different conformity assessment modules according to the product category and the risk of the product. As I say, there are reporting obligations, and then the enforcement of the legislation is done by national market surveillance authorities. So most products are allowed to self-assess, and some products have to do ex-ante conformity assessment in a risk-based way. So the scope of the CRA is pretty huge if you haven't been made aware of that yet. So both hardware and software products are covered. This also includes sort of smart products, what the legislation calls remote data processing solutions. It does not include non-commercial products such as non-commercial open source products. It doesn't include services, including standalone software as a service, when they are purely web-based offerings. So websites, for instance, are excluded. But of course, when a software as a service is provided as part of a smart product, then that is actually a remote data processing solution. And so, that is part of the product. Only when it's a standalone SaaS would it be excluded. There are also some other sectoral exclusions. This comes from existing legislation, so things like automotive, medical devices, certified aeronautical equipment, marine equipment. These have existing legislations on cybersecurity. And this slide gives us a sort of idea of the compliance lifecycle. So manufacturers need to start by doing a risk assessment. They identify the essential requirements. They carry out the necessary conformity assessment, and then they can place the product on the market. At that stage, the maintenance kicks in, so vulnerability handling and reporting. And then once the product lifetime expires, reporting obligations continue to national authorities. Different categories of conformity assessment, as I mentioned. 90 to 95% of products are allowed to self-assess, so they fall into the default category. Important to understand, this does not mean that they're all low-risk products. They may be high risk, but they have been not included in the important or critical categories, which are considered basically important or critical from the point of view of ICT network or digital infrastructure. So the important products and the critical products are there. Again, it's not a clear differentiation on risk between these categories. Important products come in two classes. Important products class 1 are allowed to self-assess if they have a standard. Important products class 2 always need to go to a third party. Critical products are separated from important products largely because they are subject to the possibility of having mandatory certification in the future. This would be subject to a market impact assessment and the existence of certification schemes. So it's really about alignment with existing cybersecurity certification framework. It's not necessarily a risk selection, although of course risk considerations have been included in the development of this legislation. So it's normal that there's somewhat of a gradation, but it's not clear cut, and manufacturers always have to do their own risk assessment as part of the start of their compliance product process. Okay, so as I say, CRA was adopted in December 2024. So implementation is now firmly underway. The development of harmonized standards has started. There's a number of implementing legislations that need to be brought out, some of them by the end of this year. So those are the most advanced at the moment. We have in particular the technical descriptions of the important and critical product categories. This is to be adopted by 11th of December, and there's already been a public consultation on this first document, so perhaps some of you were aware of that. Maybe even you gave comments, and that's really great. So there's been a lot of discussions, and we will be coming out with an official document soon enough because there's only a few months left to go. There's also a delegated act on the terms and conditions for CSIRTs to withhold notifications. So this I can explain. As part of the Cyber Resilience Act, manufacturers have to report vulnerabilities to their national CSIRTs. National CSIRTs may do a check in the vulnerability. If there's national security concern or some other conditions, they may decide to withhold that notification from the other national CSIRTs of the other member states. Remember, there's 27 member states in the EU. And so these are the terms and conditions within which that can be done. But in general, the CSIRT should then pass on the notification to the other member states. So that would be the normal situation. Finally, there's also a single reporting platform that needs to be set up in order to enable all of these reporting obligations. And that needs to be operational by the 11th of September 2026, when those reporting obligations actually kick in. More work that we are doing. So to support the implementation of the CRA, we're also trying to come out with the legal guidance. A lot of discussion has started, and this is meant to cover a lot of different topics. There's a few different acronyms here, so I will just explain what those mean. The legislation actually asks the Commission to do some of this and to touch on some of these topics, so we'll definitely cover those. And we also want to cover any other topics that stakeholders feel need to be clarified. So that covers at least the remote data processing solutions, that's the RDPS. It covers also the open source software and the open source software stewards, which are a new figure set up under the CRA to kind of create a bridge to the non-commercial open source projects. Also, how to define the support period of the product, how to define the interplay with other union legislation, because of course the CRA is meant as a horizontal cybersecurity legislation. It will touch on a lot of different products, but a lot of products also come under other legislations. So how do all these things fit together? Also the notion of substantial modification of a product that has legal implications. And if a product is substantially modified, then a risk assessment might need to be redone, for instance. So in that case, it's important to define when there is a substantial modification. So there will be guidance on all of these things. And also the question of facilitations and support to SMEs. There will also be guidance in general to try to support SMEs and how SMEs are particularly supported under some specific measures of the CRA. I think I have another slide on that. In the meantime, we're also supporting the member states to set up their notifying authorities and the market surveillance authorities. So this is an essential part of the enforcement of the legislation, which happens at national level. And we've started the CRA expert group, which is an advisory group, multi-stakeholder body, basically, that not only helps us to discuss early draft versions of this guidance and to give feedback and to help us understand other topics that might need to be clarified or any other issues, and basically to serve as an entry point for some discussions. This expert group is not the only means for stakeholder engagement of the Commission, and Commission remains open to discuss with any stakeholders, but it's a useful forum that is well structured where discussions can take place. There's been 2 meetings of the expert group held already, so February and June, and next meetings will be happening also over the summer and then in September. Specifically for the SME support, I think it is important to highlight that because the CRA scope is broad, we are aware that SMEs are impacted by this. Largely, we're not talking about SMEs that are simple technology users. We are talking about SMEs that are manufacturers of products with digital elements. So some of the support measures included, in particular in Article 33, involve awareness raising and support for testing and conformity assessment activities. I think that's going to be very important. Also, the concept of regulatory sandboxes, this has appeared in other EU legislation, and this is something that we want to help to support really innovative SMEs, innovative products, and how to think about the interplay between the technology and the compliance. And then there's a specific empowerment for the Commission to come out with simplified technical documentation, which in theory would make the compliance effort a little bit more streamlined. Of course, this was before the simplification push that now the whole Commission is dedicating a lot of resources to think through what can be, how can things be simplified in a large scale. So this was an early beginning of that. And of course, the whole wave is going to come, and there's a lot of discussion at the moment on how exactly, for instance, technical documentation can be simplified. And finally, today we're here in this this event greatly organized by Cyberstand. This is thanks to support under the Digital Europe program and all of the other projects that we'll be presenting, I think at 11:30. They're also supported through the Digital Europe program. And this is really one of the main keys that we have had to try to support the implementation of the legislation. And I hope that that can be successful. So I'm really looking forward to the presentations today. I will try to join as much as I can to see sort of how things are going, and happy also to take any questions on the side or in the Q&A. Finally, we come to standardization. So this is something I've been working on closely over the last 2 years, and it's an important step for supporting the compliance with the legislation. In particular, in the EU, we have this figure of the harmonized standards, which give a legal presumption of conformity, and therefore they give a lot of clarity to the market about what is expected. But to do that, there's a whole process involved, basically how to translate legal requirements into technical requirements. From the Commission side, from our side, this happens through a standardization request. So the Commission comes out with a standardization request to the European standardization bodies and asking for specific standardization deliverables. This request has been adopted by the Commission, was notified to the standardization bodies who have accepted it, and the work is firmly underway. There's a work program already been developed, and I mean, thank you to Lucia and to Etsy, who are both here today, Sensenelec and Etsy, who have been working tirelessly on this. So the idea of the standardization request is to build on existing international and European standards. This is a key part because there's a lot of cybersecurity standards out there. A lot of industry already follows good standards. There are strong frameworks out there. So we really need to not reinvent the wheel, especially because we have ambitious timelines, a lot of work deliverables to be done. But we do also need to kind of create some coherence in all of this fragmented landscape. This is, I think, an important aspect since product security was largely not regulated until now. There was a large fragmentation in the market, different frameworks, different even paradigms of security. And the CRA has sort of picked and chosen what the legislator considers to be the best from each approach. And so there's a lot of, I think, updating of standards that needs to happen. And we're trying to organize this under this two-tiered approach. We have a set of horizontal standards that have been requested that are meant to kind of provide an overview of different technical mechanisms, security mechanisms to provide compliance. And these should help to give some coherence to the overall exercise. And then different vertical standards, because product-specific standards are much easier to come out with a proper statement on how to make something secure. So the more reduced the scope, the easier it is to have that discussion. And so that's why we're asking for product-specific standards. And really, we've had to prioritize also the important and critical products that I mentioned before. There's the CRA Annex 3 and 4. So there's a list of products that are in this standardization request. But this is just the first building blocks of a new ecosystem of product security standards, because the idea is that the horizontal standards can support the development of further vertical standards at any product categories, any manufacturers that wish to get together and organize themselves to produce a vertical standard may do so as long as they follow the horizontal framework and they follow the CRA essential requirements. And that should help everybody to have sort of easier compliance because of this figure of the presumption of conformity. It just gives clarity to the market of what is expected. So that's standardization. I think a quick overview of the deliverables requested. As I explained, we have a set of horizontal standards and a set of vertical standards. And I understand today we have in the room several people who are involved in this work. So thanks very much for your good efforts. And thank you to everybody's interest in this. I also want to take a moment to encourage any companies who are not yet involved in this kind of work to really look into this, and again, to get in touch with the ESOs, the European standardization bodies, to understand how you can participate in this work. And finally, we have a visual representation of the standardization efforts. So we have the type A and B standards that form the horizontal framework. There's different deadlines involved. And we have the type C standards. These are the product-specific standards that have a relatively tight deadline because we basically want the standards to be in place 1 year before the entry into application of the legislation. This is to try to provide manufacturers as much time as possible to actually adopt these standards. With that, I think that comes to the end of my presentation. And I don't know if there was time for questions or how you'd like to structure it, but thanks very much to everyone. So with that, I would like to wish everybody a great event today. I really hope that it will be enlightening and interesting. The agenda looks jam-packed full of information, and I will try to follow as much as I can as well. Maybe I will be here physically for lunch, so hopefully I can catch some of you at that time. So thanks everyone for your good efforts. Thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Felipe. And now I'd like to call Angelo up onto the stage. So Angelo's a very important part of our project. He's one of our evaluators, and he's very important in very informed, sorry, in terms of his involvement in the development of the standard. So Angelo, I'll let you introduce yourself. I know you have a slide on that. You can move forward and you can move back. Okay, great.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much from the fact that you say that I'm important. I hope so. And I hope that, of course, just I want to introduce myself with the next slide, just to see who I am. So I'm working as a rapporteur for the two standards that has been mentioned also by Felipe, that did a great presentation to illustrate the progress of the CRA and an overview. I'm responsible as a rapporteur for PT2 standard, that is generic security requirement, is a catalog of security control that we are developing. And then for the PT3, that is the vulnerability handling requirement. And my activity are, of course, sponsored by the Stanford CR project under the grant agreement, under the ESMEA grant agreement. I want to add an additional perspective compared to the one from the Commission, from Philippe, and my goal is to present to you some overview of the essential requirement and some use cases, an example that will show you why it's important to have harmonized standard. Let's set up the context. This slide is, of course, already presented by Felipe, but I want just to highlight that what we are trying to do is to minimize the cybersecurity risk, as mentioned by Felipe with the diagram with the cheese. So we try to reduce the hole in the cheese because 100% cybersecurity is not possible. And to do so, it's important to have a technical standard that is guiding the industry. This is a slide that is presented by Sensenelec many times, but I want just to focus here to show you what is the mapping between the classification of the CRA of product. We have the default class, where you have a self-assessment, the default class category that is 90% of the product in Europe, smart washing machine, games, mobile apps, and so on. And all the products that fall in the default class, so all the products that are not class 1 and class 2 or critical products, can do self-assessment, but they can use harmonized standard, but they can choose also to not do so. What I'm saying is that for them it's also optional to follow the horizontal standard, but of course is suggested because it is the language that they can communicate. They can communicate with the same language with Notivadi, with the test lab, market surveillance, and so on. Even though it's not required, it's important that there is a reference and cross-reference. Important product class 1 are products that they can choose to. They can do the self-assessment also, but they need to follow the harmonized standard. If they choose to not follow the harmonized standard, they need to go through a third-party assessment. So this is the hook. And then we have also important class 2 that are more critical class of products. And we will have also later a presentation from other verticals. And here you find, for example, hypervisor and other type of device like that. And they have to follow the harmonized standard. And so that is the hook, and they have third-party assessment. And we have also an additional category of critical products that here you can find hardware security box, smart card, and so on, that are also critical for the industry. And since they are critical for the industry, you need to go through a third-party assessment using CSA, Cybersecurity Act certification like EUCC. So, and that was the idea. Of course, we have all the horizontal standards that we are developing. I'm developing 2 of the 3 horizontal standards. The other standard that I didn't mention is the principle of product principle for cybersecurity that includes also the risk assessment part. So there will be also in the future some standardization requests for other specific to additionally specify the class in the default category, but this is not for this time. I want just to provide you an overview. This is the timeline also shown by Sensenelec in many occasions. I want just to refresh the idea. So we have the heavy workload now. In fact, last week, yesterday from 16 and 18, we had a meeting in Berlin to discuss about the progress of the standard. And I flew back yesterday here from Berlin just for this event. And I want to show you that, of course, now we have the heavy workload until November, where we need to dispatch the PT1 and PT2 for public inquiry to get public feedback. And the idea is that we will have the standard PT1 and PT2 ready for September 2026. And then, of course, the PT3, we are trying also with the PT2. We are trying also to advance a little bit the deadline from 2026 to 2027 to 2026. We are trying to advance the PT2 because we want also to support the verticals, because if that standard is delivered as planned in 2027, vertical couldn't reuse our work. So I think that this is the reason why we are trying to do the effort to move ahead to the timeline, and we are trying hard to do so. This is just a slide that I collected for you. If you want to learn more about the standard, there is an interesting page from the Sensenelec and ETSI when they accepted the standardization request. There is a great video from Bangkok that I suggest you to watch. It's 5 minutes, and you can see the overview of the horizontal standard and also vertical, and of course our objective. If you are trying also to contribute and to understand better what we are trying to do, I suggest to have a deep read about the legal text, the Cyber Resilience Act text, and of course, all the standardization request that is very critical as a core knowledge. And of course, to have an additional better understanding, I'm suggesting also to go through the new legislative framework that is the base of all the work that we are doing, and of course, Blue Guide. And if you want to know also about the background of why CRA was created, what were the choices and so on, there is an interesting impact assessment that was published 15 September 2022. Usually to understand better the regulation, this is where I start and where I try to do to have a deep reading. There is a lot of text, but it's important to understand also why things are created. And today I want also to provide you some of this information. So now we have the CRA, but before CRA, we have also the Radio Equipment Directive, Article 3.3 D, E, and F. And this will be applied from August 2025. And that is like an anticipation of what we will see. The red is only cover the product, but the important things of CRA is that is covering also associated services and the concept of remote data processing, also the backend layer of the architecture of a product with digital element. So, like I said, the objective of CRA and the essential requirement is to cover hardware and software. And that is important. and to make sure that products that are placed in the European market have fewer cybersecurity vulnerability. So that is the objective, of course, and with the harmonized standard, we want to set what does it mean, this fewer vulnerability, what does it mean, the baseline cybersecurity in a technical manner. Of course, and the objective, the end objective, the goal is to provide better protection for consumer. We should not forget that while we are writing the standard, we are writing this for consumer to secure the supply chain, organization, business, and infrastructure. Because CRA, for the security of the product, plays also an important role with the NIS 2, with securing critical infrastructure. You cannot secure critical infrastructure if you don't secure the product that are in this critical infrastructure. And these are all pieces that are put together to have a more secure European market and hopefully also global cybersecurity with the Brussels effect. So, like I said, we have a requirement for security by design and risk assessment. This is a requirement for PT1 that we are developing the standard. And then you have a list of security control that you need to embed in your product from the concept creation of your product until the end. And then you have all the list that you don't need to have no exploitable vulnerability in your product, data minimization, and so on. I will not go in detail, but this is just give you an overview. And the other concept is how you handle the vulnerability requirements. There are other regulations that they try to do so, like UK PSTI with the CVD requirement and so on. Just have this slide. This is an interesting activity done by ENISA and the General Center. That was in February 2025. So at the beginning of this year, there was a study to understand what are the main gaps. And of course, also, this was also an input that we are reusing because we understand what are the main gaps. I try to summarize here the main aspect. I will not go through each one, but I want to give you just the feeling to have it as a reference. And of course, you can see as a first item, there is the major pain point for the industry, the risk assessment for product. There is a lot for risk assessment for organization, but not for product-specific risk assessment. This is the reason why we are trying also to do our job with PT1 to try to address some of this concept. Of course, more work is needed on this to also educate the market, educate the manufacturer, and this is something that all of us needs to do. It's not only the standardizer, but also the test lab, the notified body, and so on and so on. And then, of course, and the manufacturer itself. And so it's a responsibility of everybody of us. Let's see some example. So this is a nice example. My friend Kyla, this example, I don't know, is familiar for you if you had seen some of the webinars from Ben Cox, convener of Working Group 9. But for who is not familiar with this is an interesting case. So my friend Kyla was a very successful toy in terms of functionality, in terms of appeal for the end user. And this was an innovative toy that won also an award in 2014 as a most innovative toy of the year. But there is a hook here. It was innovative, but there was no cybersecurity implemented. And this was a big news because in January 2025, there were the first vulnerability. And then, of course, also the German Federal Network Agency has invoked the federal law against espionage. I will just highlight this point. When this happened in Europe, there was this toy, not only in Europe, but also in USA. There was, at the time, no regulation to force the manufacturer to ban the product from the European Union. And that was the main problem. There were security vulnerability for this product, but there was a recall for safety issue, but not for cybersecurity issue. And the only country in Europe that was able to ban this product was Germany, because they invoke their specific law about Espionage Act. And they were the only one. But the other country couldn't invoke any of these similar law. And this is the reason why we had a little bit of rush to have the Radio Equipment Directive Article 3.3 D, E, and F to be activated before the activation of the CRA, because it takes time, as you can see, also for the development. And this is just to give you a little bit of context why it's important and why this is important for the security of all the citizens, of all of us, because it's give us power and, of course, in be better protected from this kind of risk. What was the problem? So there were a lot of issues for the now essential security requirement. So there was a lack of safety. In this doll, you could connect Bluetooth, and imagine people could connect to the doll remotely, more than 20 meters away, and speak with your children. And this was a little bit scary at the time. He had also similar vulnerability for IP camera, baby monitor, and imagine. So having a stranger speaking with your kids is something that doesn't let you feel safe for sure, and is a big concern. And this shows a failure of security by default configuration. So there was default password, and there was also the problem that there was no authorized access, because there was no access control. You could just connect with your phone without pre-authorization, nothing. And we should not this happen anymore. And the only way to do this is also with regulation and with the technical standard that will guide manufacturer and market surveillance to do their job effectively. There were other problems like illegal use of terms. So data were collected in a savage way without even specifying where the data were going. There were kids' secrets shared. All the information were going to Massachusetts, in USA, because there was a software for speech recognition that was used, and this was not transparent. And there was even hidden marketing, because there were pre-recording information, and of course there was commercial agreement, for example, with Disney movie, and the doll was speaking about Disney movie. And so also this type of things are important for the GDPR and for data minimization and so on. Another example, so I want just to show other two cases, just to reinforce this concept. We had the Mirai botnet attack in 2016. So it was the first time that there was DOS, denial of service attack, distributed denial of service attack against Netflix, Airbnb, Amazon. This attack disrupted a lot of the internet, the services, and was the first time that the bot were not computer, but were IoT devices. So that is the first thing. And why happened? Because there was a default password, and so you could scan the network, find this device, and then with the default password, you could create a botnet, a list of zombies, and then decide where to attack. This is a free computational power for hacker, and we should not allow it. With a simple resolution that is weak default password. We say, okay, we learn something from that? No, because there are a lot of evolution. There was Brickerboot. Brickerboot was a device that could destroy your device, because you were spinning the CPU so fast that you can even destroy the device itself, creating a damage for the end user that had that product. This is the reason why other regulation like the Product Liability Directive and regulation and others are important also for your protection as a citizen. Then we have also another example, that is the Log4j in 2021. That was important globally, also for the United States, that they had also an executive order for the software bill of material on that, because of course Log4j was a library that were used in many software, mostly Java, and there was a remote code execution, very bad. So it means that there were a lot of manufacturers that they were using this library, and they were not even aware about this library. And the manufacturer found themselves that they had no, time to react, because they didn't know even if their product had this library or not. And they spent a lot of time to respond to this incident. Casually, this requirement is also in CRA. And this is the reason, because we need also to be able to respond to incident. This is the last slide. So, and I want just to to reiterate the importance of harmonized standard. Harmonized standard is a technical implementation of the law. Of course, while manufacturers, they are implementing the security requirement, they need to refer always to the law. But of course, harmonized standard is a technical mean to reach this objective. And it's a kind of translated, as you can see, the legal requirement, what to how you need to implement this requirement. And this is a kind of common language for different economic operator in Europe. So just to summarize, I didn't put all the economic operator, I didn't mention open source and so on, but we can go in details, but this is just to give you an idea. Manufacturers are using harmonized standard to understand better what they need to implement to have minimum security. And this is like a benchmark, because of course, a manufacturer in the same field, like a toy, and you have a manufacturer that is implementing more security and less security, this creates a market disadvantage because the product costs a little bit more. And so this is the reason why with harmonized standard, you draw a line, what is the minimum that is required. And so this is important also for competitiveness, proportionality, and all this concept for SME and so on. Notified body, of course, they need to do the assessment, and they need to speak the same language that is used by manufacturer. And so this is the reason why, and they can use harmonized standard to reach this objective. And then, of course, you have the market surveillance. So we need to have a mean for market surveillance to see, okay, this product doesn't align with the technical interpretation of the law itself. And it's easier when you have an harmonized standard to reach this objective and to have fairness for the market. And this is the end of my presentation. I don't know if I was over time. Perfect. So if you have any question, I'm here.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions from the audience?
Oh, we have questions. I was not so clear like Philippe.
Your slides had a bunch of obvious hyperlinks that looked like they might be really helpful. Where can I find your slides?
Okay, so I think that
Oh, yeah, sorry. So all of the presentations will be published online now, basically. Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay. I have a question over here. If you could on.
Yeah, thank you very much for your overview. I find it's a little bit of a personal question. What is your biggest takeaway from going through that process over the time? So what did you learn most from looking into standards, looking into what's going on there, what the reality of the implementation is?
yeah, I think that is interesting questions. And then there is a lot of things to learn, but the things that I learned is that there is a lot of different interpretation of the same things, different feeling. And then the challenge, like I said, is to align this interpretation. And when you need to align, you need to find the right compromise for all the stakeholders. And I think that is the biggest learning, that is a continuous learning, unfortunately, but no, unfortunately, luckily, because in this way we can integrate in the standard different perspective and make sure that is proportional. Yeah. I think that is and there is also another thing is now is mentioned also the open source steward in the CRA, and then there is more and more importance for the open source community. And so this is very, very relieving. Thank you for the question.
Okay, and then I think we may have one online.
Yeah, I'm going to read from the chat. So we have a question. What is the view on interplay with AI cybersecurity, as most digital products will have AI in the future?
I think that there is an interplay, and of course, all high critical system, AI system, they need also to comply with the CRA requirement. To this, I have also communication with the convener of the AI that is implementing the harmonized standard, and we are trying also to align on this matter how they can reuse what we are doing in the horizontal standards. So yes, that is the connection, and we are trying also to align with the industry. We are trying to align with the vertical. We have a weekly meeting with the vertical rapporteurs. And so really we are trying hard to find alignments between all of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. That's great, Angelo. Thank you very much. Round of applause for Angelo, please. Okay, and now I'd like to welcome Matteo Mole up from AXO, and he's going to be managing the next session.
Good morning, everyone. So while the chairs are being set, I will briefly introduce myself. My name is Matteo. I work for the European Cybersecurity Organization. We have a lot of members in EXO, European Cybersecurity Organization, a lot of cybersecurity manufacturers, users, but also public authorities and academia. I myself work in the industry for a while, and the last year I had fun discussing about Cyber Resilience Act implementation. So also a lot of familiar faces here. And for those who know me, or my approach in a way, which is very practical, you know that probably now I'll improvise a little bit, meaning that after seeing the presentation from Felipe and Angelo, I think, this is all I wanted to say as an introduction, which gives us a bit more time. But let me just say maybe this, and I'll give you maybe a different perspective. So to me, for the market, Cyber Resilience Act is showing that any company, many company can now be software company, even though they didn't know that. And that when you become a software company, you can't just ship and forget, right? When there's software out there, you just need to take care of it. And my experience is that as a company, especially SMEs, and that's why as CyberStand, we're tasked a lot in working with SMEs, is that at the end of the day, you want to fix your C mark in your product so that you can sell it in the market and you can continue doing business, paying salaries, taxes, and keep being in business. And now, on the different perspective and the comprehensiveness of the CRA, we were brainstorming what to discuss today, and we tried to take a bit like a perspective of on conformity assessment, which is the process the manufacturers need to perform in order to determine if they're complying with the essential requirements. And if they're complying, they need to show that they're compliant, demonstrate that. So that's the tough question. To show that you're complying, there's different pathways. The question is, what one should I follow? And just spoiler, I'm not going to tell you which one. First of all, because it's a tough topic. Secondly, because as we've seen in the previous presentation, a lot depends from your organization, the risk assessment, the products, your marketing, and also the availability of some of these pathways, as we call them. However, we wanted to have a practical approach today. That's also what I found to be quite successful in the past. Also because one of the tasks of CyberStand is to raise awareness. And my feeling is that in these debates, there's a lot of polarized area. There are people that know the nitty-gritty details of the comma of the law and tells you, oh, I told you that, Matteo, already, that's the article number, blah, blah. And then you got other people, especially market operators, who have they have a lot of things to do during the day, so they don't know the details of CRA. They know more or less what that is about. I think in CyberStand, the approach we try to do also with our working group is to create an even knowledge of the CRA in order to go toward a successful implementation. Because all these people, not only let's say the people who are the expert to stay in Brussels, will be needed. Everyone will be needed for the successful implementation of the CRA. So coming to the pathways, I don't need to repeat myself because we've seen them. But when I discuss with small market operators, basically what I say, okay, you can self-assess, and most of products falling under the scope of the CRA will self-assess. You might want to apply and comply with an harmonized standard, and that can give you, if you do it in full, presumption of conformity. Or you can go using basically another organization doing third-party conformity assessment. And then there will be also, when activated, a path of using European cybersecurity certification schemes. In light of this, I asked myself, how can I provide an example for a company of what does that mean, to self-assess or to go to third-party conformity assessment? Well, I cannot do it with CRA. Maybe we can speculate about it. But I think it's interesting to show what's happening today, how companies today, for instance, are self-assessing or are using third-party conformity assessment. What are you doing with cybersecurity standards nowadays, companies? And this might be very familiar for someone who's selling cybersecurity product or product with digital elements or embedded software, but might be maybe less familiar for people who stay in Brussels and haven't worked in an SME, for instance. So that's why I think that's at least my perspective, trying to bridge in these gaps is very important. And you will see it's very interesting to see bringing these two people going together, this group of people. Finish with my introduction. So with no further ado, I wanted to call on stage Adela Prockova. She's cybersecurity manager at ComUp. ComUp is a SME active in Czech Republic and is also marketing their product in the EU, but also overseas in Canada and Australia. Please, I'll have a seat. Don't want to keep standing. She will explain much better than me, but at ComUp, they design and deliver smart power control solution for power generation and energy management. A lot of these controllers then go into microgrid and other, basically some of your customers of this type of network. And they're found in hospitals, data center. You told me also some as far as in Antarctica. So you have quite a large market. Obviously, CRA is important for them. As you said, but many other people I talked to said, my customer are asking me, are you compliant to CRA? So that's becoming a hot topic. And you're cybersecurity manager, but we got in touch thanks to the CyberStand communities. So thank you for making the trip and being with us today. And secondly, I would like to call on stage Dean Swart. He represents the TIC Council. The TIC Council, for those of you who don't know, represent the testing, inspection, and certification industry. So it's quite crucial for the implementation of the CRA because many of the organizations represented by the TIC Council will apply to become notified bodies and perform the third-party assessment you might want to go through. He's the chair of the Conformity Assessment of Connected Devices Working Group. He's also Global Business Manager for Cybersecurity, Device Security, and Audit Solution at US Solutions. And I had the pleasure to work with him before in EXO. We had a technical dialogue trying to brainstorm about these problems. Now, the third chair is not for me. I like to stand, but we have a surprise guest today. But you know it, so I want to introduce him. Is Angelo, who basically invited himself on the stage. I couldn't refuse. I will try to come up with a question for him, but I'm sure we'll manage. Yeah, a bit of Italians. You always need Italians. So, but I'd like to start then with Adela. And that's a question that I had at the beginning, but I think could be useful for everyone. We talk about self-assess. We talk about using cybersecurity standards in an organization that goes from 100 to 150 employees. So some of the teams maybe are reduced there. You are a cybersecurity manager, but obviously you're not a huge multinational. What does it mean for you? What are the challenges? What does it mean for you to self-assess today, in a sense, to apply standards or to refer to part of a standards? And to me, what's interesting is that you can provide perspective from, let me call it the real life. But what does it mean for you to apply cybersecurity standards today?
Thank you, Matteo. So first of all, you mentioned a lot of stuff I wanted to say, so thank you for that. At the beginning, I would like to thank CyberStand for organizing this event, because I think it's really important to have discussion across the industries, and like that's what you are doing continuously, because we really have to give our voice to the EU and to the Commission, and there is still time to influence stuff. So through the industrial associations, we should participate in the public consultations and so on. So this is very important, and thank you for that. Regarding the cybersecurity in our sector, you mentioned what is our business. So obviously we have been focusing on cybersecurity of our products for several years already. It was not from the legislative point of view, but because we have to provide to our customers secure solutions. The cybercrime has huge funds. Cybercrime is very well organized and is not waiting for the legislation. So we had to get ready. Our devices, as you mentioned, are used in critical applications, and the availability of these systems is crucial for our customers. And cyber attacks would be one of the ways how to put them out of operations. So this is really very important for us. And therefore, we have been looking in the past how we can standardize, because as you always also mentioned, we are not only delivering in EU market, but also out of EU. And therefore, we were looking for some way how to provide to our customers the assurance that we are following the cybersecurity requirements. So at that time, there was the IEC 62443, that is the standard that we started to use to design and develop our products and put them into the production, into the market. So I think this is the crucial point at the beginning of your journey. Of course, you want to motivate your top management that cybersecurity is important. You have to have a good team of people who are skilled enough, who are educated. And then everybody wants to jump in and start to implement. Okay, we have this door, we have to make it secure, so let's enforce it, let's put some locks on it, let's make some gate in front of it, and everybody is like keen to do stuff. But I think at this point, it's very important to take a deep breath, take one step back and really think, okay, which is the standard that is the best for my customers, for my industry, for my type of product, and do this whole risk assessment and threat modeling phase, understand how the product is being used, what is the application, so that you design and you use the security requirements in a way that the product is not overcomplicated for the customers in the end, but still has enough security for being compliant and providing the security. So I would really, and I think CRA very well covers it, that you have to do these preparatory steps before you jump into the development. So this is also for us prescribed in the IEC 62443-4-1. So the secure development lifecycle from specification to the putting the product on the market.
And you use this standard then to basically to follow procedure to avoid that everyone just jump on thing and try to plug stuff and do things. You follow a standard. I mean, that help you organize your action in this way.
Yeah, exactly. You have to implement the processes, then you follow them, you have to document everything. So once the CRA comes, you have the things ready, basically.
You're jumping on CRA. That's for the second question. No, but indeed, that's the idea. To me, what is interesting is that you have experience in using standards today before CRA is there, right? We're talking about cybersecurity today. And then we've seen a bit of like, what does it mean for let's say, for a company to do that? And then I would like to go to you, Dean, also to discuss with you about third-party conformity assessment. And this comes from the following. We had a webinar at CyberStand on third-party conformity assessment, but we realized that we were talking about these, or like some of the standards that Adela mentioned, and many people in the audience sometimes say, yes, but maybe they've never seen one, they don't know what we're talking about. Or maybe they have a wrong idea, and they keep having this wrong idea. So we had this webinar, it was quite well participated. So my initial question to you is, at the end of the day, what does it mean to perform a third-party conformity assessment? Where do I get started? And I know at some point with CRA, I might have to, or even want to, do a third-party conformity assessment. So what that's about, well, how does it work? And you have practical experience, so.
Perfect, thanks. So maybe I can use CRA as an example of a typical process flow and how it would work in terms of conformity assessments. So ultimately, if we look at the likes of CRA, the essential requirements have been published in the official journal of the European Union, and that acts as the baseline for a lot of the activities that's then supported through the rest of the Act. Now, in order for, if we look at, for instance, in the tech council and tech industry, we always look at it from three perspectives. There's advocacy in terms of education, and we realize that throughout the market, there's various aspects and levels of education that is needed and required in terms of not just implementing previous or existing standards, but also new standards in the way that it needs to be implemented from a manufacturer's point of view. Because we are seeing there's various levels of maturity within different organizations. We're also seeing the likes of reputation within the Tech Council, which is also critical for us to ensure there's quality assurance processes so that it's not just seen as another additional cost, something that doesn't add value to the organizations, because that always comes up as a key topic.
Yeah.
And that's why we have the likes of 17025 accreditations and 17065 accreditations to ensure it's not just the skills and capability and expertise, but it's also creating the consistencies in a governance structure and framework. And this is also important when we're engaging in conformity assessments with manufacturers. And then the third part is also best practices. For example, we've actually taken some standards under the Radio Equipment Directive, EN 303645, EN 18031, and we've run hackathons to ensure that best practices are applied in terms of organizational interpretations. We take those results and feeding them back into the likes of ETSI and various standard authorities or standards bodies to help and support as well in terms of what we've seen in terms of feedback as an industry stakeholder. Now, the reason I'm raising those is because those have got a direct impact on the manufacturers themselves, because it's all about consistency and standardization in the market. So to do a successful conformity assessment, we need to look at a number of factors or steps. The first is obviously looking at your product. So making sure that you've got strong documentation on your product. And the documentation is everything from doing a risk assessment throughout the life cycle of the development, ensuring that you have all your intended use clearly defined, ensuring you have all the evidence needed so that when you get to that point of conformity assessment, it's not now we need to catch up. It really starts in the beginning of your life cycle management. The second critical part as well is, and we've seen with CRA, is things like the vulnerability management. So very important. You want to make sure you put a product out that's secure, security by design, security by default, ensuring, and Angelo touched on a lot of the topics. Those are critical factors in terms of ensuring your product goes to market secure, first and foremost. But we know that cybersecurity is changing on a constant basis. So also very importantly is looking at the vulnerability management. So how do you identify the vulnerabilities? How do you document the vulnerabilities? How do you remediate the vulnerabilities? How do you report the vulnerabilities? The ENISA platform should be ready by September 2026, a critical factor in terms of integrating that as part of the process. And again, documenting this throughout the lifecycle management. And then there's the categorization. So going through your risk assessments, we've seen there's 3 categories or 2 subclasses. Default, we know that majority of the products today, 90% of the products will be sitting in the default category. And for that, we know that appropriate standards would be applicable in terms of conformance assessments or presumption of conformance assessment, should I say. We then have the likes of the important products, class 1 and class 2. And there you have the use cases of a harmonized standard in the case of class 1, or in the absence of a harmonized standard, you could use a notified body, the same as for class 2. And then we have the critical products, which have a much broader impact, where there you'd look at the European security schemes, EUCC, EU cloud security, EU 5G, or in the absence of the member states implementation, you also have the option to look at notified bodies as an alternative. So looking at the categorization is a very critical path to how you can submit all of this processes and documentations and evaluations towards your conformity assessments. And then obviously the last step is the issuance of the CE marking. So looking at the CE marking, making sure that you've gone through the compliance processes before putting that CE marking on your product, which gives you access to the European market. So really simplifying a rather complex process. Critical part coming back to the first step, education is one of the primary drivers needed today to be successful for conformity assessments.
Thank you for the answer. I like the fact that you mentioned also in the beginning that there's a sort of like, we see security as a burden very often, but it's also, if you go under some procedures, you can also use it as a differentiator for your, in the market. Now, it's easy said, but that's the message I like to bring, and that's what I keep hearing. Like, we want to show that we're good in security, not just because I need to comply, but because my customer will be happy about it. Might even say I will shop CRA compliant stuff and integrate it in my product. Now, as I said, I wanted to bring together 2 different audiences and worlds. So sometime at the end or even offline, feel free to raise question if you maybe were not familiar with some of the things mentioned so far. But because Angelo came on stage with us today, then I will take this opportunity to ask you a tough question. Well, no, not tough, but I was thinking, and also from the perspective of the communities we've been raising, obviously we have, you work in Sensenelect, you work a lot with the standards. I've been part of this meeting. It's very, I would say, detailed and complex sometimes, and also iterative. And obviously you cannot bring in the room the millions of SMEs or experts that I know and you know of cybersecurity that are working daily. But how can we make sure that this market these inputs are always in a way, you're always in touch with that breathing heart of the European cybersecurity community without obviously flooding your meetings with people and come and sit and say nothing, right? If you have any ideas, I know we have the communities, you have public meetings, but I think that's just this maybe a point to make.
No, I think that this is our most important point, and I think that also the internal regulation for Senelec, we have also in our internal regulation the fact that we need also to take input from SME, and then making sure that that our standard and development of the standard process is appropriate also for the industry, and this is the reason why the standard in working group 9 we have a lot of representative for a manufacturer. There are a lot. There is also SME. There are some representatives from the open source, and I think that also the effort done by Cyberstand is extremely important in terms of dissemination, in terms of awareness, and this is also useful for the open source community because they can learn more about standards, more about the development of the standard itself. There was also a nice webinar from Lucia, how to apply for Cyberstand to get funding for this activity, because maybe they don't have time or money to participate to this meeting, and this is the reason why it's good also to have this kind of funding to allow also SME to participate to the meeting. And I think that the other interesting aspect that I would bring, we were speaking about the TIC industry. As per today, we don't have so many representatives of the TIC industry within our group, and we are speaking about education, the market. And I think that another missing piece for creating a solid standard is a more active participation of notified body and testing, inspection, and certification company. As per today is poor, and this is something that needs to improve, because we were speaking in the last meeting in Berlin regarding have a standard that is also testable. And who better than a laboratory can come in and see that our evaluation methodology is done in the right way. So this is a call for action, and I advocate about this many times, and then I think that this question is for Dean, if we can, as a representative of the TIC, understanding how we can fill this gap. Thank you.
Dean, I'll let you react 2 minutes on that so that
Perfect.
see, me and Angelo, we improvise.
No, perfect. Really appreciate that. I think one of the critical things, if we look at the Tech Council, we've got 100 members in 160 countries, and many of them are participating in a number of the working groups. A number of them are participating in a number of the expert group, the Senelec working group 9 with the horizontal side. Absolutely agree. I think, again, one of the critical things that we look at is there's multiple ways to look at standard development. And one of the critical things is how we can execute it on a practical level. And we've seen it, and that's why we're running the hackathons. But again, that's at a post-event after the standards have been developed, implementing and doing baselining within the market. There's always room for improvement in terms of additional activities as well as participation. So that's something we will definitely raise to make sure that we can even improve on it more as well from our 100 odd participants in the working groups. Yeah.
And thank you. And indeed, I was thinking my first job was in a micro SME with less than 10 people. And if I said to my boss, I need to go for an education session, your time is valuable for them. So I would say it's difficult we're trying to bridge this gap to create this awareness that is not heavy for the market. I think with the open source community, I've attended some of the meetings. They were really interesting because you can see a different community with a different language coming in. We need to do this bridging because at the end of the day, we're talking about the domain that should be spoken about in the same way by everyone, but it's not always the case. And so to bring another voice from the field, I would like to ask you, Adela, then jumping on the CRA. So what are your worries, your concerns, or your perception about how the CRA is going on? As you said, some of your probably vendors, but also customers especially are asking you about it. So what can you tell us about that?
So at the moment, we are receiving a huge number of inquiries from our customers regarding cybersecurity. It's very much fragmented.
In general, cybersecurity or?
Product cybersecurity. It's very fragmented by state, by industry. It takes a lot of time to go through different regulations and requirements. So one day, if we have one common standard, one common framework that everybody works with, will be great from this perspective. For sure. Of course, there are also some challenges related to the CRA. We will have a talk about it in the afternoon in one of the sessions, right? So for us at the moment, the understanding of the basic terms, there are some definitions. We are looking forward to the guidance that we should receive because a simple term like a remote data processing solution, in every word of the definition, you can find some question. So even saying which product CRA applies to, or which service, which software, is not so straightforward as it would look like. So we have to work with some presumption that most of our product will have to comply, and we have to get ready basically because the life cycles of the development and the life cycle of the product is much longer than 2 or 3 years. And you have to develop the product, you have to certify it, to put it on the market. So we don't have time to wait. We have to find our standard that we believe will be giving us the presumption of conformity and go ahead with it.
Thank you. I like this idea because it's a common theme that when manufacturers come to you, they tell you, I'm not going to think about a product and tomorrow put it on the market, right? It takes some time, it takes a long cycle. And also the questions that are raised by the market are not questions because they want to be nasty toward the European policymaker, but because there's questions that are reflecting the question of their customers. So this is market in the living. But then same question to you, Dean. So what are your, from TIC Council industry, obviously also you will be using standards also to perform third-party conformity assessment. You will need to, many of your organization members will apply to become notified bodies. How do you feel about CRA? How's it going?
So if we take a quick step back, I think if we look at where we were just 2-3 years ago in terms of cybersecurity, with the exception of MDR, IoT, and some of the other industry-specific requirements, we've recently seen the Radio Equipment Directive create education in the market, and we've seen a big shift from many cases very little knowledge about cyber to a much more mature, maybe not there yet, but definitely a progress and a journey that's happening in the industry as a whole. CRA is now that next level. And as part of that, and I think to your point as well, there's still a level of education, interpretation, standardization that's going to be required in terms of getting us to the point where it's easily digestible for manufacturers, as well as for the various stakeholders throughout the ecosystem. We also have to look from maybe one level up, is the readiness of these timelines, because they are very tight timelines. 2027 sounds far away, but it can catch up with us very, very quickly if you look at the number of activities that are underway. So whether we're looking at the readiness of the notification authorities, notifying bodies need to start being ready by mid next year. It's stated in CRA that by December, they want to have sufficient number of notified bodies available. There's a lot of work that needs to go into that. We have the surveillance authorities in terms of the market, making sure that that's also ready in terms of execution implementation. And then there's also and it's been touched on in a couple of presentations, is the interplay between regulations. We have the AI Act, we've got NIS2, we have the repeal of RED, we have a number of these sort of cross-pollination of different regulations, and navigating through that from a manufacturer perspective, from a laboratory perspective, notified bodies perspective, we're trying to work smart in all aspects as an ecosystem. And I think that's also a critical factor that definitely needs to be, I know it is a big discussion, but it's something that needs further clarity.
Yeah, and if it's challenging for us talking about it today, I can imagine for my previous employer of 10 people, how could it even be time-consuming or challenging to deep dive in. Before going to Angelo for a question I will just make up in the moment, I wanted to check if online there's any questions, maybe. I will ask you a question, don't worry.
No problem. Okay. I'm reading from the chat. So we have Joseph asking, default category presenting self-assessment is better to follow the harmonized standards?
I will answer that. I'm joking. I'm joking. I wish. I sometimes want to answer, but
I will be quick.
I'll let Angelo. See, that's
I will be just quick because it's attaching to my presentation. Of course, so harmonized standards are there to give you a little bit of interpretation that we are building all the in the working group 9, we have a lot of representatives for the industry. And of course, this is a standard that is fit for the industry. So in the default category, you can choose any standard. And then, of course, you can have a self-assessment and there is no problem at all. But if you follow maybe an harmonized standard may help also with the interaction with a notified body that maybe is following the same standard. And so this will help and will reduce the attrition. But maybe you can also provide here an addition here. And
So if we look at sort of where, again, it's all about the intended use of the product and the risk assessment of the product. In some scenarios, like we've seen, for instance, under important and critical, the requirements to do conformity assessments with a notified body, or in the case of European Security Scheme, those would be applicable as required mandates. In terms of the, again, looking at what is being applied in terms of the horizontal standards, and then also in the Act where it refers to sort of appropriate standards, it's all about creating standardization within the ecosystem, making sure that it's easily digestible for all stakeholders. The essential requirements are the ultimate guidelines when we look at it from a self-declaration of conformance, and the options are there for manufacturers. But you require a certain level of knowledge, capability, expertise to be able to sort of do things in your own way, as opposed to using a guideline that's been developed as a framework, such as many of these vertical standards are being developed. So the option is always there for the manufacturers, but this will help enable it in terms of streamlining the processes.
Yeah, just to add, it was mentioned here, the NSA mapping of the standards, very useful tool for sure. And I don't think somebody has already using some standard that is covering all of the requirements, right? So the company will have to decide whether to choose several standards, existing ones, maybe already working with these standards, and that will cover the CRA, or go for the harmonized, depending on the as state.
And just to close the loop, apart from notified body and test lab, there is also market surveillance, because there should be also somebody that verified that that product is aligned with the essential requirement. And of course, the common language is harmonized standard, but of course, you can choose also any other standard with this means. But this is just a facilitation.
I think in the communities came quite clear that standards, we're not trying to have this approach of just, you know, respecting the rule, be compliant, otherwise it'll be fine. We want to say we give you something you can aim at, so that everyone, so the authorities, the manufacturers, everyone can refer to them. So it should help. Are there any questions from? I had a tough question from Angelo, but you spared this time. I'll go here first.
Hi, it's Daniel. I have a question about Module H. I know this is probably the nerdiest place to ask this, so I thought I would just speak up. Module H is one of the 3 pathways to getting compliant certification, and it sort of says that the manufacturer is responsible for certifying that they do change management in a proper way. And then that change management has to be certified by a notified body. I'm not sure I really understand how that process is supposed to work. Could you explain?
Maybe I can just give an introduction, my perspective, and of course we have also Dean that can add a valuable perspective for this. But of course, Model H is there because, well, think about it. When you are placing your product on the market, there is Model B plus C that you are focusing on the product, but you are following a process, okay? For Model B and C, you test the product itself and a single product, and then you need to replicate this. But if your process is already good and already integrated the essential requirement, certifying the Model H, quality management system, and so on, I think that you are creating, at least for big organization, a repeatable process to make sure that you have your due diligence. This is just another way of conformity assessment. But here, I think that there is also Dean that can add a valuable perspective to this. Yeah.
Thanks, Angelo. Yeah, so I mean, as mentioned as well. So if we look at Module B plus C, Module A, it's really product-based, product-specific in terms of the way that it's looking at it from a conformance assessment perspective. When we're looking at Module H, it's much more about the organizational structure, the organizational auditing capabilities. We have seen in the industry, there's not many Model H or Module H certifications or accreditations that have occurred. It is very heavy intensive in terms of the due diligence processes. Not to say that it's not something that's feasible, but there is a process that needs to be followed in terms of its compliance requirements. If you're a manufacturer that's developing thousands of products that need to be certified, Module H may make a lot of sense. So I think it would be a business case within the organization to look at the process requirements, and that there are some documentations and there's lots around it that we can discuss maybe in a separate session. But at the same time, it would need to be looked at it on a business by business point of view. Yeah.
I assume you're all familiar with these models, but these basically are containing the annexes of the CRA and are some of the options you have to provide conformity. We tried as EXO to steal answers from the TIC Council many times, which model to use, but they will never give a concrete answer because, of course, they cannot give a legal statement. But good, well tried. Adela, do you want to add anything on this, or maybe also there was another question?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Enrico Fumetto. You will see me later because I am also the rapporteur of the working group 6. But anyway, the question is related to my work because I work for an innovation center that is following this kind of, let's say, adaptations to the law for different companies. And one of the things that they are struggling about is also the new directive on software liability, which is going to be applied ex post. I mean, after the product is on the market, so after the gates of CRA. And that is extended to include cybersecurity and psychological, let's say, damages because of an attack or a defect of product. So this is going to be, let's say, really impacting, and it's probably one of the things that is struggling most the companies with which we are innovating the products, because it may lead to civil, let's say, civil problems or fines and so on. So what's your point about this? Yeah.
Do you want to talk about it from manufacturing?
We're going a bit beyond the pathways of conformity, but it's more toward interplay. But don't worry, Adela, we'll create a consultancy and answer all these questions about interplay. But I don't know if you guys had encountered these or something you came across.
Yeah, I think that you are mentioning the product liability directive, and of course that is also for protection of users. So because if something happened to the product that damage the end user, you can create a class action, and this is something that gives you more power, more empowerment. This happened with the GDPR, with the protection of privacy of the privacy of the citizen, and I think that this is a revolutionary, so is innovative things for the industry, and I think that is needed. So, and I think that
I guess these add some complexities on the conformity path, because then you need to consider this as well as manufacturing.
You are considering anyway, because when you are doing a risk assessment, you are doing a risk assessment also for the safety of the person. Because, of course, if your device may impact on the life or may damage the person that is using, you need already to consider. The product liability directive is just an empowerment more for the citizen to protect themselves and to be reimbursed or to have more empowerment. But maybe you have something to add?
Okay. So I think coming back to the point raised earlier is this interplay between the different directives, the regulations, and the frameworks that are currently in place. Again, if we look at it from a cybersecurity point of view, CRA is applicable in terms of the execution from a cyber perspective. Product liability covers a much broader base, much the same as the AI Act covers a broader base, and this too covers a broader base. So that interplay is something that definitely needs to be considered in various discussions, as you're well aware, Emilio, as well. So I don't think it's a simple sort of yes, no answer. It's much more complex than that. Yeah. Thanks.
No, just to mention that this really, and maybe some other manufacturers will agree with me that it's sometimes difficult to distinguish security and safety, and in many regulations and directives it is mixing up, and then customers are confused and they are asking us about safety, but they are saying security, so it's bringing a lot of mess.
But I think that I just give an example. There was in USA a problem of a smart oven, and you could turn on the smart oven with a radio frequency. with something. So of course, if somebody from external gas can turn on the oven in your house, can burn down your house, and so this is something that you can consider in certain cases. But there are also some other attack surfaces that are more subtle, and of course is a more complex risk that you need to consider. So you point out a big challenge that the industry needs to.
I'll take just the hat of the manufacturer here and say, I think the point of manufacturer is to make the risk assessment, understanding these things, and then the question is, do I need to do more paperwork to comply for something different? But yeah, I'm just making that point. I want to raise a question. There are a few questions offline. I will just ask one or raise a point because I think we don't have more time. But a question of cost of standards. So as harmonized standard are part of EU legislation, obviously, I don't recall exactly the wording, but this should be available. But what about the cost of standard? What about the cost of implementing, applying a standard, and maybe adding to that also maybe a cost of providing conformity?
Maybe I will start. I reference in my presentation the impact assessment, 15th of September 2022. There is a table, impact assessment, on what will be the cost on conformity assessment. There is a price that is going from 15K to dividing the product in simple, medium, and complex. And of course, while the regulation was created with all the category, that was taken in consideration by this impact analysis. So if you want to have more information, I think there is page 134 that there is a table with all the prices on the on the second document. There are 5 documents. The second document in the link, you can check it. And this gives you an idea. But you were speaking about only conformity or the cost of the standard itself?
The cost of the standard itself.
Cost of the standard itself. I remember that in one of the intervention I said, if a manufacturer that is providing a product on the market is worried about €100 or €200 for a standard, there is a background problem. So I think that I understand the concept of the cost, but really sometimes I'm a little bit puzzled. But of course, it's not for us to decide and to define if it needs to be free or needs to have a cost.
Maybe Adela, do you have anything about this because we representing manufacturer?
Me to say, of course, the standards should be for free if it's mandatory. Yeah, I thought originally the question was about the implementation of the standard. So of course, yeah, it is much more, much higher cost than just buying the standard. The standard is a peanut. In fact, going for the assessment, even with the notified body, is the cherry on the cake. If you have to implement all these processes in the company, you have to hire people, you have to train them, and so on. That's the huge cost. You have to prepare your products. The standard is very little thing, but I think
they should be free.
Should be free.
Yeah, do we have?
Just one quick clarification. You said if the standard is mandatory, the standards are never mandatory. Yes.
Just to, so that is a good point, because the cost of complying is much more. So the cost of the standard is very small. So this is the reason why in proportionality, if you have a problem of buying the standard, you have even a problem of implementing because it's much more of the cost of the standard. So that was a good point.
Thanks. Yeah, so I mean, to support throughout any sort of compliance program, as mentioned, it starts with education. It starts with expertise. It starts with skills within the organization. It starts with changing the ways of working within the organization to encompass not just CRA, but any of these new compliance programs that are coming into effect. When we look at, when any organization looks at costs, these all play critical factors. Yes, there may be some perhaps external consultancy or advisory or support. The cost of the standard itself is pretty minimal in terms of the picture and the context of the discussions. And then you have your conformance assessments based on the risk assessment, based on the categories. And those categories are there for a reason in terms of ensuring that the risk can get mitigated through the right conformity assessment programs. So I think the discussion of cost is actually a much broader embedded discussion than only looking at how much does a test result cost.
Yeah. No, for sure. But I think it's something that maybe is not that often brought on the table. And again, because we have a diverse panel, that's what I like, to bring different perspective. As I said, I had a tough question for Angelo, but I need to finish here. So a round of applause for our panel. Thanks a lot for coming here, for giving us these answers.
Morning, everyone. Welcome back, for this session. So I'm Roberto Cascella. I'm working for the European Cybersecurity Organization, and I have the honor, thanks to Nick, to moderate, this session with European project. It's a little bit interesting journey because, first of all, Philippe mentioned in his presentation that the DEP is funding, indeed, opportunities like for SMEs to develop tools, to gather tools that will be developed, by the projects, and also to look into the compliance for the CRA and different kind of policies and legislation. There was indeed like two specific calls. I mean, one, it was launched in 2023, sorry, where we have two projects that were funded that cover as well like the CRA. So we thought, that it was important to invite them. But the main call, that will support the CRA, it was launched it was the Cyber 06. And actually last year there was a brokerage event organized by the ECC in Bucharest. And I had the honor also to moderate the pitch session for that call. So what I see today, I see that, project that proposal at the time, that joined that event had been funded. So it's interesting to see like the journey, how it goes. So we organize, since we have in total 9 projects, we organize 3 different mini panels. We try to group them a little bit, in terms of scope activities to give a little bit of common flavor. But at the end, you're going to see that all of them, they propose like tools, for compliance, which is the main objective. It's also the first time that these projects are meeting, together, which is also interesting, for setting up possible collaboration and discussions. And this is one also the objectives of CyberStance, to bring together the community and then to have the projects also interacting directly with the community to gather the needs, from the community for developing the projects. So this is one of aspects that is important also for you, and especially for the people online, to know which are the funded projects, and then also to know the activities that they are doing, and then how they can best, fit your need. So I will start, to invite the first, 3 speakers. We have 1 speaker online, and then the other 2 here in the room. So to have an open discussion. So first of all, I will ask all the projects to present, briefly in a couple of minutes, 2 minutes, what is the project about, what is, let's say, what they propose, so that you have also all the different contact details, and especially later on with the slides. And then we will have a really mini panel, 30 minutes discussion, just with the open question as before. So I invite Ulrich from LSEC, representing the CRA project. Thanks, Ulrich. There is also Pablo from representing the Cracovia project that is in the room. Pablo? Yeah, sorry. And then online we have Lenka Gondon from the Trust Boost project. Let me see, I'm supposed to move to the next one. Luigi? Okay, I see Lenka. Good morning, Lenka. Welcome. It's good. I see that the audio is off for you. You are muted. So I will try to go to the slide deck so that we can have a little bit of presentations of the projects.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Good morning, Lenka.
Good morning, everybody.
And I think that the first one we have the slide deck is going to be Cracovia with Pablo. Yeah.
Thank you.
So can we have the slides, Nick, or working on it? Yeah. Okay. So thanks a lot, for joining. So just give a little bit, couple of minutes presentation about your project. You are one of the projects funded under the, I think it was the call supporting the legislation.
Yeah.
So it was, CRA was part of it. And in that call, it was, your project started, I think, 2024. September 2024, it was a call from before, the last one. So as soon as we have the slides, but I give you the floor, maybe Pablo, just to introduce yourself and then also to start to give a little bit some insight about the Cracovia projects.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm Pablo Endres from the company 7Shift, and I'm part of the Cracovia project. And we are like I said, an EU-funded project where the objective is to create a wizard that can support the assessment process, especially for the self-assessment process, because as we all heard earlier, that's probably going to be the bulk of what lots of products are going to be trying to do. And basically the project has, it has the technical tool where we're going to be working on the wizard, where we have coverage and different aspects of the tools to be able to provide evidence for the testing, right? So we have firmware analysis, where we can check for vulnerabilities and check for the supply chain and create a software bill of materials or an SBOM, right? We have also the integration of a tool called Bunkai, which is the part that we're working on, which is a tool that allows you to do analysis on everything that has to do with network traffic and the dynamic aspect of things. So you can see, is this product phoning home? Are you using the correct encryption, right? And it gives us coverage, from anything that uses LAN cables, Wi-Fi, even cellular. We can actually see how these products are communicating. And this, of course, rounded up with a nice wizard that can give you a statement of your compliance where you can see where your deficiencies are and keep on working with it. And there's a last part that's going to be coming on that's been developed, heavily developed right now, which is an AI tool that will help you consume the documentation that you have, right, to be able to translate that into the documentation that needs to be delivered for that conformance, right? So helping read an LLD or something like that and turn it into an exit document, right, that can be used to present for that assessment.
That's fantastic, Pablo. We managed to put some, the slides that you sent on the back.
Cool.
So of course, we're going to provide all the slides later. I'm sorry for this inconvenience, technical inconvenience. So we try to see whether we can combine also with to have Lenka visually. But it's super interesting. You have a lot of tools, that you are developing in your project that could serve, different phases, indeed, both for the design, but also for testing the product, and then also for the compliance part. Just let's move to Lenka with the Trust Boot project. Let me see. Trust Boost, yeah. Lenka, if you can briefly introduce your project. No. Doesn't work. Let's go to, okay, you are here. You are muted, Lenka.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry. So my name is Lenka Gondová. I am from Slovak NBU, which stands for the Slovak NSA in translation from our language. We are here to introduce you a little bit about the project Trust Boost, which is allowing and helping participants to enhance and make it more easy implementation of various frameworks, now CRA, of course, but also NIS2 and CSA in general. There is several like work packages. So just to emphasize some of those that might be for your benefit, like directly now, is to know about the CyberBoost platform, which is a SaaS software that would allow cooperation and coordination and sharing of the information of all participants in the cybersecurity certification accreditation process. Another work packages that might be for direct benefit of you is the trainings. So as part of project, we identified the so-called gaps or possibilities of knowledge about the CRA, UCC, CSA, and various other aspects that we need to know. And then our partners who are involved in the project are delivering this for free. So if you would visit our website, you can see what's going on, what kind of trainings are available, and simply just to you can register and take part of these trainings. Also, if you would be interested to be part of the use cases or development of use cases for the using of CyberBoost platform, there is pilot projects, and of course, all these activities are helping cross-border collaboration and knowledge exchange, as well as we will be drafting the policies and recommendations back to EU.
Thank you so much, Lenka. And so the last project is CRASI, that for this mini panel, Ulrich.
Yeah, we call it crazy.
Crazy. Ah, okay.
We think we're a bit crazy as well. But you know that, Roberto.
You
need to be a bit crazy to do these things. So yeah, well, good morning, and thank you very much for the invitation, both basically Cyberstand, Nick, and you, Roberto. So Ulrich Selderstachts, I'm indeed from LSEC, which is a non-profit association based here in Belgium. We've been active for the last 30 years in cybersecurity. In this one, we responded to one of the ECCC project calls under Cyber 06, which was basically compliance CRA. And the requirements there were very specific in terms of what the Commission really wanted us to do, and you'll be hearing some from the other projects, similar types of things. So on the one hand side, we need to be able to work on the deployment of supporting CRA into the market specifically towards SMEs. That for us means that we have to start decoding the CRA, translating it for SMEs, and that's also what we're doing. We're doing that in multiple different ways. On the one hand side, we have, as you can see from the different partners on the right-hand side, both technology partners, policy-oriented partners. One of the NCCs, NCC Romania, is also a partner of ours. We have also a law firm, Timenex in this case, which are helping us out really doing this level of decoding. But then there's also the technical partners that try to be a bit in the challenging seat, because on the law side translation, it's still very much legal mumbo jumbo. So trying to get that for an SME to understand means that you really have to come up with some practical recommendations and tools. So some of the first things that we are releasing these days are some white papers, documentation, where we start with the basic stuff, as in how to do risk assessment for your products with digital elements. And so the CRA's risk assessment components there for SME specifically. Now, it can be, of course, applied and be used by anybody. We're also not reinventing the wheel. I mean, there's plenty of risk assessment capabilities out there, but we're trying to adopt it specifically for the assessments of PDEs. Next thing that we'll be doing in a similar frame is making sure that we have all of the necessary references to controls. And beyond that, we have been developing a series of additional tools that allow SMEs also to make sure that their products become secure. Because of course, that's a major thing. We can go and preach to many of the SMEs, the smaller manufacturers. You have to be able to show compliance, but if they don't know how to do the first part, that is in making sure that the requirements are being met, then you're still having issues, of course. So we give them a series of tools. One of the tools that we have made available now is what we call our SESI. And so you can find it on sesi.crazy.eu in the next couple of days. It's already available, but the domain is still trying to be a little bit awkward to us. And specifically on that domain, anybody can basically, that has embedded IoT devices, both Microsoft Linux or whatever, they can register their devices and they can actually get some secure tunnels. They can also make sure that the authentication and access controls are being met. So some of the very basic requirements can be met for SME manufacturers, which we do see quite often that are not meeting up on those types of challenges. Another thing that we have already established now is some software composition analysis based upon some SAST and DAST capabilities, mainly now for infrastructure as code. But as we know that many of developers out there are using PHP and scripting still, it's a pretty obvious thing also to consider. So we included that tooling as well, also making it available. And a third tool that we made available already now is basically something that we're going to release afterwards as well, also in free and open source, is basically compliance management tooling. So with the first security elements that we have available now, companies can start filling in, say that they're stepping into the first level of stones to make sure that that's there.
Thank you, Rick. Yeah. So that's just an introduction of the project. So maybe I would like, first of all, maybe to go back to Pablo to have a little bit of understanding, what from your view, because Cracovia and then Trustboost were the, let's say, the two projects, that started to tackle a little bit the CRA. So that to translate indeed from the legal needs, let's put of the policy, and Ulrich, mentioned that, to translate that into more something practical, tools that needs to be used. So first of all, what are the challenges that you face into that operation, to make it a little bit, to make it doable, to implement something that could be used by an SME to achieve, compliance, to test, or maybe to do also risk assessment and so on. So if you can share a little bit, with us, the journey that you had to face, for that.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I think part of the problem that all of us are having is that the harmonized standards are not there yet. So we are all working on previous examples, right? We're working with the RED, we're working with the ETSI because they're pointing us in the right direction. But there's going to have to be some fine tuning happening at the end once we know exactly what the requirements are going to be.
The twilight zone.
Yeah, in the twilight zone, exactly. But yeah, there's enough controls, there's enough standards out there to point us in the right direction, because nobody expects the CRA to pull out special requirements out of the hat. They're going to try to, maybe something a little higher, but the guidelines, the guardrails are more or less there. So that's one of the first things. And then, of course, translating, like you were saying, translating the legalese mumbo jumbo into things that is first on one layer technical, right? That the techies can implement, and on the other end, translating also to business requirements, so that the SMEs and the business themselves understand what they're doing, right? And knowing that they have to do it, because in our little bubble, we all know about the CRA, all the essential requirements, but when you go out to the public, lots of them don't even know that it even exists, right? So that that advocacy, that education is a really important part of the project and things that we're facing.
That's interesting, because also in the previous panel there was discussion about education and also raising awareness. During the coffee break, I was also touching that point with Patricia, because like companies sometimes she used the expression, they put a hand into the sand, and not yet preparing themselves, for that. And so education is quite important. And then so I see Ulrich, and then I go back to Lenka later. You mentioned that you are developing some guidelines, for that. Just into the crazy project. So what actually is the objective, that you like to reach for these guidelines? More to provide inputs, to SMEs, explaining the CRA, education aspects. Also, how did they link with what Felipe, mentioned at the beginning in his presentation, that the Commission is looking also for guidelines for SMEs, that is part of what needs to be provided.
Well, we have some of our technical experts that have been working with SMEs, with companies, doing all sorts of implementations for the last 20, 30 years. In this case, one of the partners, Torion, they're also part of the OWASP scheme, in this case, on CRA developments. So OWASP SAM has been already many years being guiding different companies in that space, both large and small. It's mainly still on the application security side, but it gives already some input. So what they've been building there is also experiencing that for large companies, they have challenges already in getting their deployment and development teams being guided and instructed on what they specifically have to do, let alone be for smaller companies that are just focused on trying to get their product out in the market, trying to get their product functioning, making sure that it's also compliant maybe with other types of legislation that they haven't found out yet about. And so in this case, CRA is something that comes on top of this for many of those SMEs. So it's really very complicated for them. And anything that can help them in putting them on the right tracks and trails, as you're saying, we think is going to be useful and necessary. And so that's the reason why we are bringing out these guidelines, because in any case, a risk assessment has to be done. It's the fundamental thing about all of this. So the very basic steps in doing risk assessments, and many of those projects and companies haven't even started doing any risk assessment because it's not in their genes. So they really have to start thinking about how do we do that? And so that's where we try to give them already some guidance in making sure that they are understanding how to.
Yeah, that's interesting. So we go, from a journey that first of all, and translating the legalese, understand, like what needs to be done, providing some guidance, educational aspects, developing the tools. And then Lenka, you mentioned in your presentation of Trustboost that you are looking to certification as well. So with respect to the CRA, because I think that if I recall well, the other projects maybe are not looking specifically into this part. Maybe Cracovia is looking into that. But just for your perspective, how you see certification coming into an end. Also because we are still developing, the harmonized standards. What will be the journey for that? And if you can just provide your perspective about this point.
Yeah, so when you think there is quite a lot of challenges on the way when it comes to implementation in the practice, and it's not only SMEs that are struggling. Of course, for them it's huge because of the funding and lack of insights and knowledge, and all this needs to be somehow supported and helped. And our awareness is not enough, it is not never enough too much. So there is also challenges for the authorities like accreditation bodies, surveillance bodies, and all of us, as we are together in this project with a mix of different stakeholders, are at least by communicating about the challenges and about the insights, we already are halfway to some kind of resolutions, because we can understand the other party, other stakeholder needs and other stakeholder perspective. So the CyberBoost platform will definitely help these challenges, at least by bringing the one platform for the exchange of information, sharing of information during the certification process. And even that we don't know yet all the standards or all the requirements in the standards. We are quite experienced with from the previous schemes or from the different frameworks of auditing, that we can create a platform where all the stakeholders like accreditation bodies, certification bodies, but the most important, vendors and like companies that needs to have a product certified, can collaborate, can easily exchange information, and later also have insights into already certified products. So this is the main benefit that I would see from the perspective of what we know now. And imagine we was creating these projects at the time when CRA was not there yet, and it was still like months already when our project started before it was published. So we are a little bit working, trying to be ahead of time and be over the cross the challenges that we don't know all the details yet.
Yeah, thank you, Lenka. Indeed, I mean, you started before the final text was approved. There was just a proposal at the time, when you submitted the proposal, Ulrich, you have a comment, and then we'll take some questions if they are from the room, also from the audience online. Ulrich, yes.
Yeah, so I didn't specify or I didn't mention the certification. We have it also somewhere as one of our goals, obviously. But what we wanted to do is really get to the level of compliance first, and making sure that some of the products and also our goal is that we can take some of the manufacturers of PDEs by hand in basically the whole period that we're doing this project, which is now another 24 months. So it's very limited of most of these projects as well. Is taking them by hand and basically getting them step by step to the level of how much that we can get up to the moment that we know that the harmonized standards are there, so that we can get to that level of compliance. And then afterwards, they can still see, okay, are there any other gaps that they have to fill? And then they can go to certification for the exact reason that Lenka is mentioning. I mean, harmonized standards are not there yet. The caps still have not been set up. Many of the competent authorities in the different member states are still trying to figure out honestly how to set up NIS2. So there's still many different other steps that have to be taken before we're getting there. Now, I mean, in 2 years' time, we know that the world can change like 15 different times. So that might also be the case here. And so I think probably all of us, from what I'm hearing, we will be ready by then. And we should actually also come out with some specific use cases. So in our instance, we try to come up with some use cases both on the general class 1, class 2, and critical products, so that we have for all of these at least some use cases that we can say, okay, this is how we think it can work, but it's still how we think it can work.
Thank you, Ulrike. And then I have a follow-up question for Pablo later, but just to see whether there is any question from the room. Yes, I see Felipe, and then there is Angelo.
Thank you. Hi, thanks for the presentation, everyone. Great to hear about the project. I have two questions. The first is if you think there are synergies between the projects that could be exploited, and if there's any ideas of how that could happen. And the second, I actually lost it, but I might come back to it. Thanks.
Thanks, Felipe. You stole my last, that was my end of panel question, but so we take the one from Angelo.
I think that is in the same line of Philippe, but the question is more specific. I was interested about the fact that you are putting together some use cases with your tool and platform. Your tool and platform will be also important for the SME, of course. This is the one of the important point of the call, Digital Euro program. But my concrete question, if you will make available this use case also to the public, or aligning also with Working Group 9 with the work that we are doing, so we can exchange information and be more aligned. So this is the specific question. Thank you.
Thanks, Angelo. And I see that it was maybe the point that Felipe wanted to raise. Who would like to pick it up? Maybe I will ask a comment from the three of you. Yeah.
So I think regarding the use cases, I think it was part of the call, if I remember correctly, that there had to be an application of the rule. So we also have use cases. And at least as well, now the use cases information will be public as much as that can be, because we have at least one use case that is with critical infrastructure, and there's lots that they cannot disclose. But definitely for the other two use cases, lots of information will be out. And for the critical infrastructure, there will be definitely a redacted version, right? Making sure we don't disclose exactly which critical infrastructure, which device was implied. But yeah, as much as they can sign off on it, but we want to be as transparent as we can be. And I think regarding the synergies, this is actually the main reason why I'm here. I did not know about lots of the other projects that were here, and we're really excited to be able to get to know them, interact them, and create these synergies. That's I think that's a really great initiative that was started here today.
Thank you, Pablo. Lenka?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I would not say it better. And for me, the reason to join here was just I needed to spread the word that what we are doing. But the unexpected benefit is to know how great projects are there, and I definitely see the overlaps and possibilities to synergize on all the activities we are having, because we are going to the same direction in general. So definitely all information can be useful or directly reused.
Thank you. What about the use cases, and then whether they can be made public, or maybe just also the synergies with Senselec Working Group 9? I think CyberStand could be also a facilitator for that. You have any comment on that?
When it comes to CyberBoost platform, it's directly the goal of the platform is to put together all the use cases and to use the insights of the stakeholders. So I don't see the reason why we would not share. And opposite, we have on our website there is a invitation if you have any ideas how to collaborate or to take part in the pilots, or of course before we start pilots we need to develop these use cases. So of course.
That's great. I think that can be taken also offline, that, just to see how to strengthen and then maybe make it also your job easier with something that is going to be a little bit more real case. Ulrike, if you have a comment.
Yeah, so on the question of use cases, public, yes, absolutely. With the invitation to join the working group, also yes, with pleasure. I mean, we raised this already within the consortium as well. We have multiple people. I think the only concern is that we don't want to drag in too much into too many meetings and discussions, because we know how that works. But anytime that you invite us, and I know it's an open invitation also from the working group, so we're happy to contribute, at least one of us at some point in time. So next time that you meet up, somebody from our project will be there. But I think that's also maybe one of the synergies that we can already start drawing, because maybe if one of the different project participants is participating to one or multiple of the working groups, that we can share that. So that facilitates also the discussions amongst us. That's maybe already one thing. Another thing, and that's maybe a question then to you, Felipe, reverting a question back. We also know about the technical working group. I think they've been together once, and I think there's a second meeting happening this week or next week or something.
It was in June already, the expert group.
Yeah,
there were two, February and June. I mean, it was presented.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe also to get some feedback there into the platforms, into the different projects on what's happening there, and how synergetic that we can be with them. That would, of course, also be great. I think purely on a practical level, we discussed it also in the coffee break, and I will continue discussing. We have had some meetings already with your colleagues from Katowice. And I think pure practically in terms of when putting out papers, to just name one thing, would be good to reference to each other on the different websites that we have. Would be good to reference out to. There's some tools available there. If you can find that maybe some of your tools are complementary to some of ours, happy to share those. Absolutely.
So great to hear this, and looking forward to what can come out of it. I will also be over at lunch, so hope we can catch up. I was thinking that as you are, so indeed, as you've all said, many details are still undefined, but there's a lot of discussions going on in the standards. There's also discussions going on, for instance, on guidance, right? The legal guidance that would come out in the expert group. And I think one thing that will be interesting is to understand so first of all, what questions do you have? And then which questions you have can be resolved by the standards, and which questions need to receive legal guidance. And that will be very interesting for us when we're drafting the guidance to understand what are the specific questions that actually need legal guidance, and what are more technical implementation questions that need to be resolved by the standards. So sometimes this kind of just general framework is needed in order to structure a bit the discussion. So I really want to encourage that. And then to say that, yes, it does require some involvement, right? These things take time. You need to make your questions known, then you need to clarify your questions, then you need to receive a first answer, but it's not going to be enough. So then you need to clarify your question again. And that's actually a dialogue, right? So I think it's going to be very important that these 8 projects, hopefully, can really participate actively in these discussions over the next 12, 18 months. That's going to be essential, I would say. Really looking forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Felipe, also for joining the discussion. So I think that we are at the end. So I would like to take maybe one lesson learned. Definitely, we can have Cyberstand as a channel, to gather together the project, streamline a little bit, the synergies across all the different, projects, tools that we are going to develop, but also to fit a little bit with content, and then also give back as well, to Senselec and Etsy for the standard. It's also for the European Commission for the expert group. The objective is not to reinvent the wheel, like we don't need to have like 7, 8 documents, saying the same things, but multiplying a little bit the effort across the community. I think this is strategic. It's something that we are going to take up, with Cyberstand, and it's important for the future. So thanks a lot. Sorry. Sure.
Do you think the Cyberstand grants could be interesting for some of the experts in the project to participate in the standardization?
It was open up. I mean, like the grants. I mean, they were open up to everyone. So also we reach out. We are gonna see, also maybe connection with that and Select. Maybe we can accelerate maybe the process, and then also with the projects, how to do that. But I believe that there are already some experts from the projects, from the 9 projects that are already contributing in some of them. Need to check with Teresa maybe and on that one. But it's a good point indeed. Thank you so much again. A round of applause. Thank you so much for the 3 speakers. It's gonna be again me, for the next 2 mini panels. But I try to not speak too much. The second one, I will call on stage like 3 other projects that are all from the Cyber 06 call. There is Philippe Ombredan from Octet. Yeah. Good morning, Philippe. And then there is Michał Paun from Cyberfort. Good morning, Michał. And
thank you.
Thank you. The last speaker is online, Eva.
Good to see you. Me.
Yeah. And the third speaker is Eva Tasheva from Confirmate project. She's online, right?
Hello to everyone.
Hi, Eva. Thanks a lot for joining.
It's my
Let's
pleasure.
see what is gonna work the mini screen. We can see you now. You are traveling a lot, these days. Thank you. Despite that you are in Brussels. Let's go directly to the content of the panel. I think that the first project that I have the slides here, it's Confirmate. No, Cyberfort, sorry. Yeah. So Mihai, if you can, waiting for the slides to pop up. Yeah.
I can switch the places. I will.
Okay. No, they put Octet. Sorry. There was but let's go directly to, it's fine, to, yes, Cyberfort. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. First of all, good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, actually. And thank you very much for inviting me and Cyberfort in this relevant discussion on cybersecurity and CRA. Few words about me. My name is Mihai Paun, and I represent Energy Link, a Romanian-based company active in the energy sector, in cybersecurity, consulting, and bringing together stakeholders from the telecommunication, from the energy sector, and cybersecurity as a complementary first top objective. Cyberfort. Cyberfort, it's the acronym of Strengthening Cyber Defenses of SMEs for Cyber Resilience Act compliance. And we are happy to work in an international consortium coordinated by High Energy Link, consortium bringing together experts from the cybersecurity sector, telecommunications sector, maritime, finance, and last but not least, energy sector. Why? Because if you just look at what happened recently in the Iberic Peninsula with the blackout in April and later in May with the second blackout in the Northern Macedonia, you may understand why the energy sector is relevant to our discussion. This is an 18-month project co-funded by the European Cybersecurity Competence Center, European Commission, supporting small and medium enterprises and managing service providers in navigation towards compliance CRA. We are developing a compliance management software platform. We are offering practical solutions and tools, bringing resources to address cybersecurity challenges, and also simplifying the adherence to standards and CRA. Another relevant activity is the introduction of a comprehensive concept aimed at bolstering the cybersecurity defenses of SMEs, in special attention having micro and small businesses. And last but not least, with the Cyberfort, we try to promote an innovative program meant to equip European SMEs with the tools strengthening the cybersecurity measures and achieving compliance with CRA. What is relevant in the project is that we are bringing together 4 relevant economical sectors, and we already implement 4 complementary use cases. The first one in the maritime sector, shipboard cybersecurity training program, led by Columbia Shipping Management, a Cyprus-based company. The second one in the finance sector, compliance management platform for financial institutions. The third one, critical infrastructure vulnerabilities assessment related to energy sector. We take the responsibility as Energy Link to coordinate this. And the fourth one, aligning cybersecurity solutions with CRA compliance standards.
Thank you so much, Mia. I think that we're going to keep the discussion later. So we go to the next two projects.
Exactly what I wanted to say. And I'm happy that we enjoyed the conference in Bucharest. You will have the second chance in October this year.
Fantastic.
To enjoy even more.
Thank you. So I give the floor to Eva about Confirmate.
Hello, everyone. So Confirmate stands for Conformity Assessment Metrics and Compliance Automation for the Cyber Resilience Act. You see also we are partners from across Europe, but also with complementary capabilities. So we have the coordinator, which is ITCAM, the Italian Chamber of Commerce in Germany. Cyan, it's a Brussels-based company with cybersecurity risk and compliance advisory and tools recently. Fraunhofer ISEC is also German Institute of Information Security, where they provide also their open source tool today called Cloditor, which we now adapt to add the Cyber Resilience Act requirements. The Romanian National Directorate for Cybersecurity is also helping us ensure the security. So we are testing the tool itself, the automation tool, as well as the dissemination activities. So you get it. The center of our project is to enable SMEs to comply with the CRA and more specifically to assess the compliance they have. We are building this around the automation, so enabling companies to enroll their product, and through our metrics and automation, they would be able to see their level of compliance with the CRA. We were able to automate 50% of the essential cybersecurity and vulnerability management requirements, and they would only need to self-assess the other 50%. We are also drafting guidance. So what Ulrich in the previous panel was mentioning, translating the regulation into business language for SME understanding what is CRA about, how to approach it, what are the existing standards, methodologies, but also tools SMEs could use, and the basics, of course, of risk management, vulnerability management. We also propose a pen testing methodology. It is currently a draft that we are peer reviewing, and of course, very interesting to circulate first and foremost to the other projects for their peer review, but also to other participants. If you are interested, you could contact us for that. So this pen testing methodology is based on industry standards with the objectives to prepare SMEs for a pen test that is aligned with the CRA, what they need to take in consideration, what they have to prepare in advance, and what are the standards and outputs they have to require from their pen tester or from their individuals doing the test to make sure that they have the evidences necessary for CRA compliance. We also have training modules. You could find this on YouTube. We started with the general introduction to the CRA, but we would increase the, let's say, the training numbers as we also create the more tools and guidance. So we would present this also in a training mode. We organize workshops as well, so to raise the awareness. It was mentioned in the previous panel, this is a major difficulties for SMEs. And to make it even more accessible, we translate it in 5 languages, the document. So they're available in English, German, French, Italian, and Romanian, with this cumulatively reaching at least 60% of the EU population and many of the multilingual people, SMEs out there. Our project also is short, 1.5 years. So by July 2026, we are going to deliver the tools and methodologies. We also hope to be able to continue the project and to automate more of it. We already work with other projects which are working in the area of cybersecurity.
Maybe Eva, we can touch that. That later. Yeah. Sure. Thank you so much. And I go to the last project that is Octet. I think that it's, which one do you prefer? This one. Yeah, indeed.
All right. Yes, welcome. So my name is Philippe Ombredan and our project is called Octet. And we're a bit different because it's not really a new project in the sense that we're building on existing open source projects. And we're addressing a small slice of the compliance, which is to create software bill of materials and attest whether you have known security issues in your code and your products. And what this means is that we're providing open reference data, license, vulnerabilities, package metadata, tools to detect and discover where the code comes from. And do you have a copy of Log4j in your product, for instance? And if once you know what you have, is this a vulnerable copy? And last, on top, being able to manage compliance, meaning triage the vulnerabilities that may impact package you use in your product and your code base. And last mile is create SBOMs, but you can also ingest them and create what's called VEX, vulnerability exploitability exchange documents like CSAF or CycloneDX and SPDX. I happen to be one of the co-founders of SPDX. I'm also quite involved with the standardization of CycloneDX and also a small standard called Perl or package URL, which happens to be essential to CycloneDX, SPDX, and CSAF to identify a package across all these different standards and eventually all the different tools that you use in discovering software composition analysis and vulnerability management. So that's it for me.
Fantastic, Philip. Thank you so much. So we have a little bit, the first two projects, they really focus on the SMEs in their, let's say, DNA, like in the core. So there are two SMEs also, that are represented here. And then we have also Eclipse, involved here with open source, tools and so on. I have just a first question because Eva, maybe to you first, and then I will go to Philippe. You mentioned open source tools, for deploying your tool for compliance for the CRA. So what about, the challenges that you are facing, with dealing with open source components, open source part for developing your own tools that needs to achieve compliance, and how you are gonna, verify that, maybe there is a synergy that can be created with the Octet projects.
Yes,
Eva.
so the open source tool, it's a Fraunhofer tool. So it's already a result of previous European projects, and it's indeed with the cybersecurity compliance objectives at heart. So in that sense, it was facilitated our, let's say, building up on open source, because the open source creator is co-creating with us to be able to then build upon the CRA elements. So we don't specifically look at the open source tools compliance. So I know that there is a specific standards working group at that, but we look as, from our perspective, we focus as examples, because CRA covers a very broad range of products and companies and use cases. So we took 10 product categories, which span across the important class 1, class 2, and critical sector. And we mostly focus on manufacturers. So those are entities which are manufacturing in Europe. So in that sense, we don't have specific focus on supporting open source tools, but our tool, Confirmate, it's open source itself.
Fantastic. Thank you, Eva. And Philip, going back to you, because you are kind of linked with the open source community as well. So what are the main challenges, that they are facing? And also, when we look at, there is in the case, for instance, of Confirmate, open source, tools that are developed as open source. So what are the aspects that they need to look at? You mentioned practically, okay, the SBOM and then, documentation to be provided. But if you can go a little bit more beyond that, what you see from the discussion that the community is having in the last 1 year. I see that you are very active also on the forum, like on the mailing list. So what are the main points, that you see as a challenges that needs to be faced?
So first, if you step back for a sec, why do we call all this open source? It's a big win we had starting 20, 30 years ago to abstract licensing away from the discussion we have as software developers and software engineers. I can say MIT, Apache, or GPL. With one word, I can abstract a whole legal contract, which is a license of my code. That's really important. So this is something that unifies a lot of these efforts in open source license. It doesn't define communities, but it really defines how we relate to code. It's something in terms of evolution. There's something which is called GenAI, and there's a lot of new projects and startups in that space, and they are working hard to dilute the meaning of agreed upon license definition. That's an interesting trend. It's a problem because if you make licensing harder to understand, then you make legal issues back to the forefront. The second thing in the open source community that's a problem nowadays, it's also related to GenAI in some ways, where we see an influx of pull requests, meaning contributions, incoming contributions, which are AI generated. The problem is that they look almost as legit. They almost work. They've been contributed by individuals, sometimes by a bot, but the amount of work that's required from the maintainers of this project to review and determine whether they're legit contributions or AI generated, which are a waste of time in most cases, is a real issue. And when it comes to cybersecurity, you see the same trend of AI generated security bug and security vulnerabilities. All of these require an inordinate amount of time from the maintainers, which are offering the software as a gift to actually process and handle. Give you an example. Log4j maintainers. I'm working very closely with the maintainers of Log4j, of Log4Shell fame. When there's a security bug in dependencies of Log4j, even though it may not be used in the way that's vulnerable in their context, they will receive a ton of bug requests the next day.
But just because I think that going, to the CRA context, because what you're mentioning is super interesting, especially generative AI, code developed so far. It's a thing, it's a reality. And then also that is also integrated into products that might go on the market and so on. So maybe just to have your perspective, coming from with a history of developing code in an open source way, taking into account, these let's say, factor, as you mentioned also the challenges that we are facing, how you see that, mapped also with the CRA and the products that are going to be put on the market? What are the aspects that is key to look at, especially when developing tools for compliance for products that really embed these kind of solutions?
So when the CRA came out as an open source developer, I was both amazed because I've been working on SBOMs and cyber security tools for a long time, and scared, I won't use French words, so scared the shit of me. because I thought it would really mean that open source project would have to leave Europe, literally. I don't think it's going to turn out this way, and I'm really looking forward to what's going to come out of the whatever standardization process taking place. What I see, generally speaking, is that the intentions are good, and being able to understand what is the third-party software package you use in a software product, it's good engineering business. It's good practice. Understanding if you have non-security issues, communicating that and sharing that with your users or customers, it's all good practice. The hell is paved with good intention, and that's where we need to, I hope it will come out for the best. Generally speaking, everything in the CRA are about security practice which are not deployed enough, so they're good things. I hope we won't get into a situation where it's counterproductive and it's not reaching the goal that we hope for in improved security posture.
Thank you. I will go to Mihai, maybe just because one important aspect of the project is that you have 3 different verticals, that you're addressing, like the maritime, the financial, and then the finance, and also the energy, of course, one. So how you see, this sector reacting with respect to the CRA coming into play, and then what needs to be done also in terms of both awareness and also considering, their needs, interplay also with sectorial legislations that you have or directives like the energy, there is the network code, or the finance, the DORA, and so on. So how you see that, from a practical perspective in the way that you are considering in the project, also for developing the tools?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much for the question. I think it's a key topic to be addressed while trying to understand the impact of CRA in the economy in the end. And I'm happy to start with one of the 4 sectors, maybe also the 5th one, which is the government. Regarding the energy sector and the network code for cybersecurity you just mentioned, I'm pleased to acknowledge the effort of all utilities, especially high voltage transmission system operators for electricity, involved in the process, also the stakeholders involved in the public consultation process of the network code for cybersecurity. It was a long process, and sometimes it's much easier to write the code than to implement it. So the main challenge is in the implementation phase. Not only the network code, but also other legislative elements. And because you mentioned also the impact of legislation and how we are handling this in our project in particular, and in general in our companies' day-to-day activities, we're trying first of all to be well aware, well informed. That's why we appreciate this kind of information exchange and sharing information events like the one kindly organized by Cyberstand EU today. Thank you once again for inviting. So we are active, we are in communication with the key players in the legislation sector, in the decision-making process, not only at national level, but also at European level. So we are trying to have a complete, as much as we can, figure of the evolution of legislation and try to influence it before it's published.
Thank you. So just if you take maybe one example, because I think that you are familiar with the energy sector more than, of course, you have the finance, the maritime, but when you have to develop the tools, you have, we will have maybe, Enrico, of course, covering later the smart meters, they're going to be put on the market. So how you deal, with a tool that should provide, compliance with respect to the smart meters that are placed on the market, and whether maybe this is something that you're addressing in the project or not, like in a practical way. I know that it could be like a challenge question on the spot, but it's interesting to have different kind of perspective, and maybe to link with also the efforts that has been done, has been doing, the standardization part.
Yes, Roberto, thank you for the question. Thank you for the challenge. I accept it with pleasure, especially because I'm pleased to make the link with a project in which we address the vulnerabilities of the smart meter while speaking about cybersecurity attacks. You may be aware of the fact that meters in general and smart meters as well are challenged by the vulnerability they are bringing in the network. If we speak about low voltage network, medium voltage network, or high voltage network, is the same. There was a very successful project in which we've been proactively involved, called Success. addressing the topic of vulnerabilities of smart meters. In particular, the European Commission asked to develop a specific functionality, as smart meters have plenty of functionalities. And this functionality was to protect the electricity distribution and the high voltage grid against cyber attacks through the smart meter. So it was a 3 years project with a successful outcome, bringing a smart meter costing less than, I would say, 80 euros or 100 euros. I think that was the target of the European Commission at that time. The project was implemented 4 or 5 years ago.
We can just comment quickly, you know, and then maybe we can open discussion later.
Oh yes, this is what this is my message to you. The smart meter, it's vulnerable, still vulnerable, and we in our future efforts are taking into account solutions and options to face this even better than we did in the past. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Mia. I will go back just to Eva, and then I will close because I cut you off, you know, before that you were commenting about the synergies. I'm sorry for that. You mentioning also synergies with the certification part, and so if you can please share, you know, what you are doing in Confirmate about that, and then also maybe what is whether there is any link. I mean, we're talking also about the energy, again, the smart meters. There is also interplay between the CRA, UCC, and so on. So just to have your perspective on this topic. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. So we are discussing that there are no standards yet. So we are in a way defining practical means to evaluate whether specific objective is met. And so it's very important not to overload people and to duplicate effort is to align. So if there is objective already defined somehow in another certification, so we would align or adopt it. So eventually we go more to convergence and we don't redefine a new standard and a new tools for each new certification that comes into play. In that sense, there is a cybersecurity certification a group. Here I have the name, but it's cluster, cybersecurity cert cluster, where different projects like Emerald, Cobalt, Certify, DOS, Certify as well, and telemetry are part of, and we join to be able to then compare notes, make sure if there is something already defined as a metric to assess compliance with, I don't know, identity and access management. So then we would take what already exists rather than define our own metric for assessment. Very interesting also to discuss with the panel and with the other projects is the software bill of materials. Of course, very interesting and deep topics. So
there is a problem with the connection. So maybe that goes back to the ball. Yeah, Eva, you're cut off. Yeah, there was a problem with the connection. Sorry. Yeah.
My point is that we should be cautious not to create too much information overload and too many to get lost.
Okay, I think that, you know, I capture what you mentioned, you know, maybe I can also, we have indeed, there is a bunch of projects, so we are involved, we're connected with a couple. I think that Cobalt also certified, joined the community groups, you know, under the CRA. Indeed, it's good to have this perspective. And then I'll go back. Indeed, I want to conclude, Philippe, with you. So also to have your point of view. Eva mentioned about, of course, this bomb is one aspect that you are doing, but also whether there is anything, you know, that you like to mention about Octet and open source community, how to contribute, you know, to the discussion that are taking place now.
So I'm not too much of an open source activist, yet I think informations, metadata, security information about open source code, which is the heart and the bulk of the code that we use to build system and apps today. All these data, origin, license, security, should be open. And we're making that available as part of the Octet project. That means SBOM, but also the tools to build inventories, the reference data that you can reuse in each and other projects, tools, be they open source or commercial. So please use that. And don't listen to the sirens of commercial vendors in the space, which are telling you they have better data about open source. That's not true. That's snake oil or sneak oil. You want to make sure you reuse open data for open source.
Thank you. So we are also beyond the time. So for this panel, it was a bit, discussion covering different type of topics. So thanks a lot, and for your contribution. And then there is, of course, room for cooperation, both of what the projects are doing, but also in terms of tool can be provided across, the projects to really help, to achieve the goals. Thank you so much. And then I move to just an applause for the speakers. And I move to the last mini panel. So I will call on stage. Yes, I need just to find. So there is a. Okay. No. Yeah. Well, definitely I will call on stage Patricia Schild from the CRA. Then we have the Curium. Yes, we have Argiro from online, I think, for the Curium project, and then Ristian Daskalov for the Oscarat. Thank you so much. So I'll go directly to the Curium project. I think that is the first one on the slides. Just checking whether Argiro is connected online.
Hello, good morning.
Yes, we can see you, we can hear you. Thanks a lot for joining, and thanks a lot for joining on the stage, here. So I'll just move to the slides soon of the Curium project. If you can, the three of you can be just a brief, like in presenting the main elements of the project, and then we can try to deepen a little bit, during the discussion to see also how we can connect with the effort about standardization and conformity assessment and so on. So also to reach compliance today. Waiting for the slides to come in. And maybe, Argiro, you can start to present yourself. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So again, good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are. It's a really pity that I didn't make it to Brussels. I would have enjoyed to talk to you in person. Thank you very much for the invitation to participate in this event. It has been a very interesting discussion to follow from this morning, and I'm sure we'll have a lot great discussions also following this session, also for the next parts. My name is Hadzopoulou Argiro, so it's very Greek and very complicated, so everybody just uses a simpler, more international version of my name, which is Zero. I am a part of the organization Apiro Plus Services, which is a partner of the Curium project. My background, very quickly, is in short from the conformity assessment part and the standardization regarding cybersecurity. The Curium project, the Curium consortium, is comprised from 9 different partners, including 2 national authorities, cybersecurity authorities from Greece and Cyprus. And we have diversity within our consortium, including SMEs and big organizations like EIT Digital that have a very specific broad, actually, European focus. So it is a 18 months project. It aims to support mainly SMEs in different phases. You have this slide. I try to put everything within one smile. I will not try to explain it. Hopefully I'll be given the chance during the discussion, because I know time is of essence. But the main thing is that we have 5 different tools that comprise what we call as the Curium Continuum, and organizations and SMEs especially are invited to experiment with all those tools to get training and learn to make steps within their awareness regarding the CRA, the awareness and the compliance to the CRA. So hopefully I will explain later other things.
Thank you so much. Fantastic. Just to give an overview, I give the floor, I think, to, yes, about Oscarat. Let me see here. Yes.
Great. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Christian, and I'm coming from the Digital Innovation Hub Trakia, also known as Cyber for All Star EDIH. We are the cybersecurity-focused Digital Innovation Hub of Bulgaria. And we are joined in the project by colleagues from Italy, PMF Research, the coordinators, software development consultants from Romania, and a company from Estonia that is actually the mastermind of the project, having similar to the colleagues from the previous panel, open source solution that is focused on governance, risk and compliance matters, and now is being upscaled to cover CRA and help small and medium enterprises. Yeah, I mean, if this was the last word I have to share on the panel, everything about the tools we are building is explained on the wall behind me. We try to cover extensively all the or enable the companies to comply with the act through the tools we are building for them, covering all the aspects of the CRA. We are trying to do it in a community-friendly manner. I'm not going to speak about open source, despite the fact it's built that way. But the important thing behind the open source is community, because if you just share, throw some piece of code, and you do not build a community around it, that's not open source, at least according to my doctoral research on the matter. And what we're doing is everything we try to communize, not in the political way, in the community way. For example, we need to translate the tool, the platform, in 5 languages. We're encouraging volunteers to translate in 50 languages. Things like this. We try to be more creative in that manner to create a community, and would ask you to also contribute, if possible, be part of the community by filling in the stakeholder survey. It would be great to have your insights as well on the system and the tools that we are building.
Thank you so much, Christian. And I'll go to the last one, that is CRA. Yes, yes, this one. Yes, right.
Hello, everybody. My name is Patricia Shields. I'm the CEO of CyberCert Labs, and we're the coordinator for CRA AI project. The project is supported by the European Commission, co-funded, and the ECCC. You'll see there are teams, so I didn't want to put logos because projects are about collaboration. They're about people collaborating with each other. That's our kickoff meeting in Dublin recently, where we kicked off the project. The project's a 2-year-long project. We started in January. And basically, you can see up there the project objectives. So we're building a structured tool for manufacturers of products with digital elements to be able to comply with all elements of the CRA. So we're going to guide them on their journey. We've very much focused on not jumping into write code or to do, jump in to start developing. So we spent most of the first 6 months decomposing the CRA against a typical product development life cycle that a manufacturer would recognize. So at every stage of the product development life cycle, we put against it what are the new things that these manufacturers will have to do for the CRA. So the first phase is planning. The second phase is design. These are very normal stages of a product development life cycle. So in the design phase now, a manufacturer will have to do things like risk assessment, threat modeling, and security by design. We're very much focused on the security by design element. We think that embedding security by design into the processes of the manufacturer will really help them with the CRA and in the long run. One of the stats I heard recently is that if you fix a vulnerability in the design phase or in the testing phase or in the development phase, it will save you by 70%, as opposed to if your product is on the market and you have to fix that vulnerability while it's being used by customers, by users. So we're very much focused on getting it right from the beginning and giving interfacing with our customers, with SMEs, finding out about their products, finding out about their businesses, their goals, because it's really in product development for software that you need to get people to use. You really need to understand their user goals. So we're looking for design partners, so companies that are willing to work with us and help us understand their pain points and how we can design the product to fit as many use cases as possible.
Thank you so much, Patricia. So as you can see, we put together, with Nick, these three projects because they have a lot of similarities. In a sense, there is a little bit of a path, that it goes, from the design phase and then also doing the risk assessment, checking and putting the products also on the market, checking the vulnerability and so on. So I go from maybe the point that I grasp, Patricia, from your side is that the risk assessment is key strategic, aspects that needs to be done. And then I will go directly to Argiro, to point out, because also in the Curium project, I see that you have a specific, tool for that, that you are developing also on that aspect. So how you see, the challenges to develop a proper, tool at the moment, covering all possible risk, considering that the products might be in I don't know, that also different kind of intended use, placed on the market and so on. So what is your perspective about that?
Yeah, I mean,
Patricia, and then we go to Argiro. Yeah.
Understanding the risks is key. So doing threat modeling, for instance, understanding the intended use and the foreseeable intended use of your product. What kind of environment will your product operate in? What kind of threat actors potentially would be interested in compromising your product? So the risk assessment is the key because it's a risk-based approach. And I try and avoid the word compliance as well, because when you say compliance to customers, they just kind of turn off. So really, the language we use is really important. So making your products more secure, building trust with your suppliers, making procurement processes easier for you as the manufacturer if you follow these set of rules. And if you do a risk assessment up front, you will understand all of your risks. You will be able to base your whole plan, your whole program based on the risks, which is what you should be doing.
Thank you, Patricia. Argiro, what is your view on this? If you can maybe switch the slides, remove the slides, possible? Yeah. Okay. Maybe I will ask Christian. Yeah. What is your perspective? Also because you address it in your project. Yeah.
Well, we try to fine tune the GRC messaging, so we change governance with growth to promote people not to be afraid from new regulations, CRA and others. And we try to change risk actually with resilience. So not only marketing, we simply try to fine tune the messaging. And this is what I would like to say a few words about resilience, simply because if you are able to manage risk well, you need to focus further on I would say, the path in front of your company. To be resilient, you need to address new markets, you need to address new partners along the value chain. And this is what we're trying to convey as a message. I'm using the opportunity just to mention that this messaging we also using towards, by the way, compliance sometimes is confusion among SMEs. So this conference is helping tackle as well this issue. But what I'm trying to say is that with this focus that we have a bit more business oriented, not that compliance oriented, we are trying to also focus on users of our platform from beyond the European Union, because this was not mentioned from the previous projects, and it's normal. Our projects are funded by the European Union, so the main messaging is towards the European taxpayers and companies. But in order to make the union resilient, and with this I'm concluding and closing my basically line of thought, we need to address the companies that are coming from elsewhere to sell their digital products in the union. So this is something that we see as unaddressed, I would say, sweet spot for our tool and system, and we are trying to create partnerships in Turkey, in Southeast Asia, in Latin America, so that we can actually help through our tools address the risks they face and make them more compliant, and through this make the European Union and its citizens more resilient.
Thank you. I think it's interesting. We can maybe go back later, Christian, about like importing the products that needs to be placed on the market. But I would like to hear from Argiro, because in the Curium, I noticed that you have a specific tool that you are developing for the risk assessment part. And so, what is also your view on the points that Patricia indicated before, that indeed is important to perform properly your risk assessment, understanding also what are the threats that you need to face, with a proper threat model, and then how we deal, with the products that are going to be placed on the market that could serve also different, that might have different intended, usage. Yeah. You're on mute. You're muted. Somebody needs to unmute her, I think. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm actually going to echo Patricia a lot, saying that it is risk-based. We want the essential requirements to be fulfilled, but to do that, we have to first follow the risk assessment process. The Curium project actually has put a lot of thought on the tools to use for the risk assessment, and the specific problem of composition. So a lot of the projects, and actually a really big percentage of products, are actually composite products or systems, depending on which definition you use. So they're not individual ones that are created for this specific thing, and you can do the testing, so, and even follow the risk assessment. So we follow a risk-based approach that is based also on composition and decomposition of a composite product, and then we go through the activities of identifying the different objectives, the security objectives, and identifying also the risks related to that. So it is the basic process is there, but we are mostly focused on identifying also and decomposing the product.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I mean, like in EXO, we are tackling the composition aspect. I mean, with Matteo in particular, working also on this point, because that could. I mean, if you look now, a lot of products that are placed on the market, indeed, they have different kind of components that are integrated with horizontal scope, and then they can be, let's say, put together in a product. So it might be a way to speed up a little bit the compliance, and then the placement of the market as well. Maybe just a couple of questions about the composition. How you deal, with the maybe components, whatever that falls under different type of categories, and then how can really also, in your perspective, reuse evidence, like in also consider the legal aspects, linked to testing, assessment that is done. Whether you have any comment about that?
Yes, composition is not an easy topic, and we are definitely not there yet. So we do not have all the answers. Of course, we don't have them as a project, but I think the community doesn't have all the answers. We have definitely used the EXO working group deliverable also to guide our thoughts, and it was part of our original material that we used in order to identify the problems and come up with a proposal for the Curium project. So composition is difficult. Decomposition is easier. So we use the software bill of materials, the SBOM, in order to identify the different assets that comprise a composite product. And then we run the individual assessments for vulnerabilities, and that would lead us to the identification of applicable threats and risks on each of these assets. And then we see it as a whole, as a composite product. Of course, it's the whole concept of intended use makes it a lot more difficult because it's something that is for something that has a lot of data and it has a structured approach. Then we have intended use, which is not a structured approach. It's something that every organization has to come up, and we have to see how that fits actually with the risk assessment process. There are a lot of issues. There is the challenge of finding information on the assets that are comprising the composite product. And there are legal issues. There are multiple assurance levels also employed when we do conformity assessment, but I will not continue to that and take all the time.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Indeed, there are quite some complexity. Maybe I go back to Patricia, because you mentioned the life cycle, aspects. And then, so just to have a look, in which way in the CRA AI, you are looking into tools, how you're covering the life cycle part. And then, once the products are placed on the market, I think that it is also important that to have a proper understanding how to monitor and so on that aspect. Yeah.
Yeah, so our product has APIs with other capabilities. So essentially, the core product is looking at the risk assessment. It's looking at threat modeling. It's looking at results from testing. But we will have APIs into like vulnerability management platforms, secure code analysis tools, SBOM. So we'll have a lot of these integrations because, there's companies out there that do that very well. So we're not going to reinvent the wheel and create a vulnerability management solution. So essentially, if the SME or if the customer is using a specific provider and they want to integrate with our solution, we can pull those results back in so that they'll have their testing results and all of their coding reviews and all of that kind of information and their SBOM. So actually today, meeting the other projects that are covering some of those areas as well, we could have integrations between our solution and their solutions. So, creating that ecosystem of the projects that we have here that have been funded by the European Union is really important, because there will be much larger companies than us who could come into the market with inferior products that don't have the understanding of, people who attend these events and, really get inside the guts of the regulation. So we should work together as much as possible to be able to create that ecosystem that complements each other. And listen, we'll have overlaps, but that's just the way it is. But where we complement each other, we should be working together to really spread out these projects.
Thank you, Patricia. That's a good message. And I go back to Christian. You mentioned that you are covering in your part also in your project like products that are not developed in Europe, so that is a little bit easier to look into the design phase and so on. Let's put it this way. So what you are doing actually with respect to that? Whether are you going to facilitate? Whether you have like tools that will help, placing products not developed in Europe on the market here.
Yeah, I mean, our tools are universal. We are trying to target a broader client base for these tools to be used and for this broader base to be compliant with the CRA based on basically leveraging most of our value proposition without the need to go through a consultant, which basically is the point of the European Union investing in our projects. But I want to add something else in regards to what Patricia said, and it's also related to your question about external or third parties. Our projects, all of these solutions, first of all, I don't think any of them is like something related to rocket science or curing cancer. So the value is that instead of saying to the SMEs, listen, go and find the right solution for you to get a compliance check and be compliant with this regulation, go to these points of contacts and they will guide you through the way. But the problem is that these are 18, in the most of the cases, 18-month projects. Even the 36-month, the value of the CRA will not be felt so strongly in 2027. So we need to find a way to integrate our outputs, our deliverables into a broader policy framework. And what we are doing in that regard, so reaching out to third parties, not only to foreign companies to leverage our solutions, our tools, we are trying to create a linkage with the European Digital Innovation Hub network. Not only that hubs are participating in our project, but we are trying to promote our platform as a service for these hubs to offer to their clients, which means that we would be offering our platform to the hubs across Europe, 200 of them, which will be more and more focusing around compliance in the next 3-year period, especially around the AI. And they would be able to sell it to their clients, and they're selling pro bono services as state aid, so that our tools can be leveraged more broadly across the union. And this is a strategy to basically outlive the duration of our project and to have a broader and bigger value. Now, this also has limitation because, again, these hubs are only open to service European companies. So I hope that Digital Europe expands in the broader Mediterranean region, because we see potential in that regard. Even with EXO, we did an access to finance event with you a few months back in Sofia, and we said there are Western Balkan countries interested to participate, and you said no, they can't because the project is funded through the EU. So we want to change this mindset, again, coming back to what I said many times. To be resilient, we need to open up, we need to cooperate beyond the borders of the union, not only with member states and associated members and applicant member states, but basically with our main trade partners across the world. And the hubs are one of the vehicles if they're also able to figure out how to expand their outreach.
Thank you so much. I have maybe just a comment also, Link, just checking whether there is any question from the audience. Also online. Otherwise, maybe a question for the 3 projects in the meantime. So whether you or maybe your other partners in the consortium are contributing towards the development of harmonized standards, or, like getting benefit, from the grants of Cyberstand, how you see, whether you can work maybe in the next months, or whether you see that is important, which aspects are important to look at, for helping, let's say, to fasten up the development of the standards. Yeah. Patricia?
I guess we're very interested. We're following the standards really closely, and we're building that capability into the solution so that when they do become available, we can make them accessible to the users. Connor, as you know, our CTO, he's on Working Group 9, JTC 13, developing the risk assessment harmonized standard. So we're following that closely, and it's great to have him on the consortium because he can feed back to us as well.
Thank you. Argiro?
Yes. Actually, we have very strong positive feelings towards standardization. So we are very happy to have 2 members, one of them being the National Authority of Cyber, that participate very actively in Workgroup 9. And me, myself, also, I'm a participant also representing Cyprus in the work group, but we will not be limiting our feedback to the work group, but rather we will try as much as possible to extract what we learn from the usage of our tools by the interested parties, and in order to provide a way forward. We have, as I said, 5 different tools, and each one of them tries to tackle one of the important parts of the CRA requirements, starting from defining the scope. If you are within scope, or if you are without, what are the requirements, how to do your technical documentation. So trying to go one step at a time. And through that, we will try to see if we can contribute not only to the standardization, the SDOs, but also to policymakers. So especially for the first part, I would like to see whether the technical descriptions that NISA will be making, will be issuing, the Commission will be issuing to help with the definition of scope and applicability of the CRA, whether we can also provide that when we the relevant tool is tested by the stakeholders.
Thank you so much, Algiro. Christian?
Now, on individual expert level, of course, we're engaged with the development of standards, but what we are engaged with through the platform as additional value that we offer is the development of vulnerability disclosure policies, not only the reporting part, which is obligatory, and we try to offer it through the platform, but in a broader sense, vulnerability disclosure policy that can be basically fine-tuned through our platform. Is important to include gray areas which companies in Europe are not utilizing enough, such as encouraging ethical hacking. We are here in Belgium, which is one of the handful of countries across Europe which has ethical hacking regulated through recent changes in the cybersecurity law of 2023. And anyone who is technically savvy can help any company by testing according to its vulnerability disclosure policy. But even if the policy is not in place, he's protected by law. While if he does the same in Bulgaria on a Bulgarian company system, he will be prosecuted by law. So we are trying to basically evangelize the idea of ethical hacking through helping the companies craft the right vulnerability disclosure policies, which are encouraging, which are first of all including and then encouraging such acts of cybersecurity research on their products and on their systems, simply because the non-ethical hackers are either way researching this area. We want to encourage the opposite, and this is how we do it through one of the modules of our platform.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Yes, Lucia?
Thank you very much, Roberto, for hosting and sharing these interesting sessions. I'm Lucia from Sensenelec, and I really want to say that there are a lot of very good ideas there in the projects, in all what we have seen. And by joining the working groups, you can get access to the draft standards, which is not possible for the general public because of copyright issues and stuff. So what we really need is for you to bring these ideas to the standardizers as well, because your contributions will really, really make a difference. So we welcome your contributions. You're welcome to join and take a look at our drafts. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lucia. Indeed, I mean, that's a super valid point, and that's why, because I mean, what they are doing in the projects can be very much useful in terms of lesson learned on the field, but also gather insights, like a first-hand on what has been, currently discussed, developed, that could help the project as well to have tools and that they can really help, facilitate the compliance. So that's very good, really the contribution, to the standard. That's a role that Cyberstan will take up a little bit more, like with the community, and then to see not only towards standardization, but you all raise a valid point, with respect to the policy, with the guidance that the Commission is developing. And then the last point is awareness. I mean, that's something that also we will reach with this event. So a big thank, for your opinion, to your value, to the community. And I think that we are gonna break up for lunch just after this panel. Thanks a lot for your participation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.